Elena Ward thought signing divorce papers would be the worst moment of her life, until armed men dragged her from her cafe and threw her into a warehouse to die for debts she never owed. Abandoned by the husband who destroyed her, she became collateral for a stolen fortune. But when a dangerous stranger paid her ransom without blinking, she learned that escape doesn't always mean freedom. Now trapped in a world of power and violence, carrying a secret that could destroy her, Elena must decide: run from the man who saved her, or trust him with everything she has left. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far Elena's story travels. But the courthouse hallway smelled like floor polish and broken promises. Elena Ward stood motionless outside Family Courtroom 3B, clutching a manila envelope that contained the official end of her marriage. Through the frosted glass door, she could hear muffled voices, lawyers discussing schedules, judges calling cases, lives being dismantled with the efficiency of an assembly line. She'd been inside that room 20 minutes ago, signing her name beside Victor Hale's for the last time. He hadn't even bothered to show up. 5 years of marriage dissolved in his absence. Her hands trembled as she tucked the envelope into her worn canvas purse, careful not to disturb the pregnancy test buried at the bottom. 2 pink lines. Positive. She'd taken it this morning in the cafe bathroom before her shift, staring at those lines like they were a death sentence. Victor's baby. Growing inside her just as their marriage died. Elena pressed her palm flat against her still flat stomach, fighting the urge to cry in a public hallway. She hadn't told anyone, not her mother, not her coworker Jenna, certainly not Victor. What would be the point? He'd made his priorities clear when he stopped coming home 6 months ago, when the credit card bills started arriving from cities she'd never visited, when she'd found the receipt for diamond earrings she'd never received. Some women might have fought harder, demanded explanations, tracked down the affairs everyone whispered about, but Elena had learned early in life that fighting only got you hurt worse. Her father had taught her that lesson before he left. Victor had simply reinforced it. So she'd signed the papers, agreed to everything his lawyer requested, asked for nothing. And now she was 28 years old, divorced, pregnant, and working double shifts at Rosie's Cafe to afford the studio apartment she'd be losing next month when her landlord raised the rent. "You all right, sweetheart?" Elena jerked her head up. An older woman with kind eyes and a court employee badge stood a few feet away, holding a stack of files. "I'm fine," Elena lied, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. "Just processing." The woman's expression softened with recognition. She'd probably seen 1,000 Elenas pass through these halls, women realizing their marriages were corpses they'd been dragging behind them for years. "It gets easier," the woman said gently. "Not right away, but it does." Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The woman squeezed her shoulder and continued down the hallway, sensible shoes clicking against linoleum. "It gets easier." Elena wanted to believe that, needed to believe that. But standing here in this hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat, holding divorce papers in one hand and a secret that would change everything in the other, easier felt like a foreign country she'd never reach. She took a deep breath, counted to 5 the way her therapist had taught her before her insurance ran out, and started walking toward the exit. The courthouse was downtown, a 30-minute bus ride from the cafe where she needed to be in 45 minutes. She'd timed everything precisely, scheduled her court appearance during the morning lull when Rosie could manage without her. Her boss had been understanding when Elena requested the time off, hadn't asked questions beyond, "You okay, honey?" Rosie was like that, tough as nails but soft where it mattered. She'd given Elena the waitressing job 3 years ago when no one else would hire someone with gaps in their work history and references that went nowhere. Elena pushed through the heavy courthouse doors into weak October sunlight. The morning was cool, carrying that crisp edge that promised winter. She pulled her cardigan tighter, the navy blue one with the missing button she kept meaning to replace, and headed toward the bus stop on 3rd Avenue. She made it exactly 7 steps before the collision. One moment she was navigating the courthouse steps. The next she'd walked directly into what felt like a brick wall wrapped in expensive fabric. Her purse flew from her shoulder, contents scattering across the concrete. The manila envelope landed face up, official seal visible. The pregnancy test, thank God still in its box, rolled toward the gutter. "I'm so sorry," Elena dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather everything before someone saw, before anyone noticed. My fault entirely. The voice stopped her cold, deep, controlled, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Something European underneath the American English, polished smooth by years and money. Elena looked up. The man standing over her was nothing like Victor. Where her ex-husband had been boy-next-door handsome in a forgettable way, this stranger possessed the kind of presence that made people step aside without conscious thought. Tall, over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones. Strong jaw, eyes so dark they were almost black, currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. Custom tailored, the kind of clothing that announced wealth without needing labels. And he was crouching down, picking up her scattered belongings with hands that moved with economical grace. Please, I can... Elena reached for the envelope, but he'd already retrieved it, his gaze flickering across the visible text. Dissolution of marriage, Ward versus Hale. Something shifted in his expression. Not curiosity exactly. Something cooler. More calculating. Difficult morning, he observed, handing her the envelope along with her wallet, her keys, her... Elena's heart stopped. He was holding the pregnancy test box. Their eyes met. His revealed nothing. Hers probably revealed everything. He placed it carefully in her palm, his fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second. Congratulations or condolences? The question was asked without judgment, without the pitying tone she'd been dreading from everyone who'd eventually find out. Just a simple inquiry, as if he genuinely didn't know which response she needed. I don't know yet, Elena admitted, the truth falling out before she could stop it. He nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense. Then he straightened, offering his hand to help her up. Elena hesitated. She'd learned to be wary of men who appeared helpful. But her knees were aching from kneeling on concrete, and refusing would make this moment stretch longer than necessary. She took his hand. His grip was firm, steady, pulling her to her feet with effortless strength. This close, she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. Thank you, she said, stepping back quickly, clutching her purse against her chest like armor. I should have been watching where... Victor Hale. Elena froze. The name hung in the air between them like a guillotine blade. I'm sorry? The stranger's expression remained perfectly neutral, but something dangerous flickered behind those dark eyes. Your divorce. Victor Hale. That's the name on the document. It wasn't a question. Elena's pulse kicked into overdrive, that prey animal instinct that had kept her alive through her childhood, through her marriage, suddenly screaming warnings. Do you know him? She forced the words out, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. We've done business. His tone made it clear that business was a generous term. Recently, in fact. The way he said it, flat, emotionless, made Elena's stomach clench. Victor had always been involved in schemes. Get-rich-quick plans that never materialized. Investment opportunities that somehow always required borrowing money. She'd stopped asking questions 2 years into their marriage, around the time she realized ignorance might be safer than knowledge. I haven't spoken to Victor in months, Elena said carefully. The divorce is final as of this morning. Whatever business you have with him has nothing to do with you, the stranger finished. Ideally. That single word, ideally, carried implications that made her blood run cold. But not always, Elena whispered. He studied her for a long moment. Elena had the uncomfortable sensation of being catalogued, assessed, every detail noted and filed away. The worn cardigan, the scuffed shoes, the way she held her purse like a shield, the barely concealed fear she'd never quite learned to hide. Finally, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a card. Heavy stock, matte black, with a single phone number embossed in silver. No name, no company, just digits. If you find yourself in difficulty because of your ex-husband's choices, he said, pressing the card into her hand, call this number. Ask for Lorenzo. Lorenzo? Elena repeated numbly. De Luca. He inclined his head slightly. Not quite a bow, more an acknowledgement between equals, which was absurd given she was a waitress in a borrowed cardigan, and he was clearly someone who operated in entirely different circles. A word of advice, Mrs. Ward. Elena, just Elena now. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. Elena, your ex-husband made certain commitments he failed to honor. These commitments have interested parties who may not understand the concept of divorce. Ice slid down Elena's spine. What kind of commitments? The expensive kind. Lorenzo's expression remained impassive, but his voice dropped lower. I would suggest being cautious over the next few weeks. Vary your routine, stay in public places, and if anyone approaches you asking about Victor's whereabouts or his assets, you call that number immediately. Elena's hands had gone numb. I don't know where he is. I don't know anything about his money or his business or... I believe you. Lorenzo cut her off gently. Unfortunately, not everyone will, which is why I'm offering you my number. Why? The question burst out before Elena could stop it. Why would you help me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. For the first time, something almost human crossed Lorenzo's face. Not warmth exactly, but something adjacent to it. Consider it professional courtesy, he said, and perhaps a gesture toward the person you might have been had you married differently. Before Elena could process that statement, the strange mix of compliment and condemnation it contained, Lorenzo stepped back, creating distance. I hope you won't need to use that number, he said, but I suspect you will. Then he was gone, striding toward a black Mercedes idling at the curb, its driver emerging to open the rear door. Lorenzo disappeared inside, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic, leaving Elena standing on the courthouse steps clutching a business card that felt heavier than it should. Her phone buzzed. Jenna, texting from the cafe. You okay? Lunch rush starting early. Elena shoved the card deep into her purse, next to the pregnancy test and the divorce papers. 3 pieces of paper that somehow represented her entire life right now. On my way, she typed back. 15 minutes. She made the bus with seconds to spare, collapsing into a window seat as the vehicle lurched into motion. Through the scratched plexiglass, the courthouse receded, that building where she'd officially ended one chapter without any idea what the next one held. Lorenzo De Luca's warning echoed in her mind. Interested parties who may not understand the concept of divorce. Elena closed her eyes, one hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. What the hell had Victor gotten involved in? 3 hours later. The lunch rush at Rosie's cafe had been brutal. Elena's feet ached as she wiped down table 7 for the 3rd time, removing the sticky residue some customer's toddler had left behind. The cafe was finally emptying out, that post-lunch lull when the business crowd returned to their offices and the afternoon regulars hadn't yet arrived. You look like death warmed over, honey. Rosie emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was 63, built like a linebacker, with steel gray hair and a Brooklyn accent that could strip paint. Court go okay? Elena managed a tired smile. It's done. Officially divorced as of this morning. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Rosie's expression softened slightly. You taking the afternoon off? I can cover if... I need the hours. Elena cut her off gently. Really, I'm fine. Rosie looked unconvinced but didn't push. That was another thing Elena appreciated about her boss. She knew when to leave things alone. Table 3 needs their check, Jenna called from the counter. At 22, she still had that college student optimism Elena vaguely remembered having once. And that guy in the corner booth has been nursing the same coffee for 40 minutes. Think he's waiting for something. Elena glanced toward booth 7. A middle-aged man in a rumpled jacket sat alone, cup untouched, eyes on his phone. Something about his stillness felt wrong, too controlled, too watchful. Vary your routine, stay in public places. Lorenzo's warning whispered through her mind. Elena shook it off. She was being paranoid. The man was probably just working, like half their customers did during off-peak hours. She delivered the check to table 3, pocketed a decent tip, and was heading back to the counter when the cafe door chimed. 2 men entered, both wearing dark jackets despite the mild weather. Both scanning the room with the kind of systematic attention that made Elena's instincts scream. Their eyes locked on her. Elena's blood turned to ice. The men approached the counter where she stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. This close, she could see the barely concealed hardness in their faces, the look of men who'd done things that kept them up at night, or more likely, didn't bother them at all. Elena Ward? The taller one spoke with a slight Eastern European accent. Polish, maybe, or Russian. Who's asking? Elena forced the words out, proud when her voice didn't shake. Friends of your husband. Ex-husband. As of this morning. The man's smile contained no humor. Congratulations. Unfortunately, your ex-husband owes our employer a substantial amount of money. $3 million, to be precise. The number hit Elena like a physical blow. $3 million. Victor had stolen $3 million? I don't have that kind of money, she managed. I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about Victor's business or… We're not here for the money, the second man interrupted. His accent was thicker, harder to place. We're here for you. Time seemed to slow down. Elena registered Rosie reaching for the phone behind the counter, Jenna backing away toward the kitchen, the man from booth 7 standing up, hand moving inside his jacket. I don't understand, Elena started. The taller man's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with crushing force. Victor Hales stole from the wrong people. Since we can't find him, you'll do his collateral until he surfaces. He won't come for me. The words tumbled out in a rush. We're divorced. He doesn't care. Then I guess you'd better hope he has more conscience than you think. The man started pulling her toward the door. Come quietly, and no one else gets hurt. Elena's mind raced. She could scream, fight, but these men wouldn't hesitate to hurt Rosie or Jenna or the handful of customers still in the cafe. The thought of innocent people bleeding because Victor had destroyed her life one final time made her sick. Okay. She forced herself to go limp, compliant. Okay, I'll come with you. Just don't hurt anyone. Relief flickered across Rosie's face, quickly replaced by fury. Elena, honey, don't… Call the police, Elena said steadily, meeting her boss's eyes. Tell them what happened. Tell them… The taller man's backhand caught her across the face, snapping her head sideways. Pain exploded through her cheekbone. Elena tasted blood. No more talking, he growled. They dragged her toward the door. Through the window, Elena could see a dark van idling at the curb, rear doors already open. This was happening. This was really happening. She was being kidnapped in broad daylight because her worthless ex-husband had stolen money from people who collected debts in blood. The pregnancy test in her purse flashed through her mind. The baby growing inside her that Victor didn't know about, that these men didn't know about. If you find yourself in difficulty because of your ex-husband's choices, call this number. Lorenzo DeLuca's card was still in her purse. Not that it would help now. She'd be lucky if these men let her keep her purse, let alone make a phone call. They were 3 feet from the door when it crashed open. The man from booth 7 moved with terrifying speed, weapon drawn, firing twice before Elena's captors could react. The taller man released her wrist, stumbling backward, red blooming across his shoulder. His partner reached for his own gun, but booth 7 was faster, putting a round through the man's kneecap. Both kidnappers went down screaming. Elena's legs gave out. She collapsed against the counter, ears ringing, the smell of gunpowder sharp in her nose. The shooter kicked both men's weapons away, then pulled out his phone with his free hand, gun still trained on the writhing kidnappers. Package secure, he said calmly into the phone. 2 hostiles neutralized. Send cleanup crew to Rosie's Cafe, 3rd and Lexington, and tell Mr. DeLuca his investment paid off. Elena's head snapped up. What? The man lowered his weapon slightly, offering her something almost like an apologetic smile. I've been assigned to you since you left the courthouse this morning, Mrs. Ward. Mr. DeLuca thought you might need protection. He… What? Elena's mind couldn't process this. Lorenzo DeLuca, the stranger she'd literally bumped into 3 hours ago, had assigned her a bodyguard? We should move you to a secure location. The man holstered his weapon beneath his jacket. More of them will come. Victor Hale's creditors are extremely motivated. I need to… Elena looked around wildly. Rosie was on the phone with 911, voice shaking. Jenna had disappeared into the kitchen. The 2 wounded men on the floor were being zip-tied by booth 7 with practiced efficiency. I can't just leave. Yes, you can. A new voice, smooth and familiar, spoke from the doorway. Lorenzo DeLuca stood framed in the entrance, looking exactly as composed as he had on the courthouse steps. Behind him, two more men in dark suits surveyed the scene with professional detachment. He crossed to Elena in 3 strides, crouching to meet her eyes at her level. You have approximately 10 minutes before the police arrive. If you're here when they do, these men will tell their employer you've been compromised. More will come. Different tactics next time. Quieter, more final. Do you understand? Elena understood perfectly. These kidnappers had wanted her alive as leverage. The next ones wouldn't bother. I can't disappear, she whispered. I have a job, an apartment, which you're about to lose anyway. Lorenzo's tone wasn't cruel, just factual. Your landlord raised your rent. You can't afford it. You've been looking at cheaper options in worse neighborhoods, telling yourself you'll make it work. His dark eyes searched her face. I'm offering you another option, one where you survive the next few weeks. Why? The question came out broken. Why do you care what happens to me? Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression, something almost vulnerable beneath the controlled exterior. Because I've seen what men like Victor Hale leave behind, and I'm tired of watching collateral damage bleed out because no one intervened. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Lorenzo stood, offering his hand. Choose now, Elena. Police and danger, or my protection and safety. Elena looked at that outstretched hand, looked at the 2 men bleeding on the cafe floor, looked at Rosie's terrified face, looked at the future stretching ahead, endless shifts and impossible rent, and Victor's debts following her like a curse. Looked at her purse, where a pregnancy test sat next to a business card she'd thought she'd never use. She took his hand. Lorenzo pulled her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. Marcus will get your essential items from your apartment. List what you need. Clothes, my documents. There's a photo album under my bed. Marcus. Lorenzo nodded to booth 7. Handle it. We're going to the estate. What about the police? Elena asked numbly as Lorenzo guided her toward the door, his hand firm but gentle on her lower back. What about them? Lorenzo's smile was cold. Those men entered a cafe with illegal weapons and attempted kidnapping. My employee defended innocent civilians. The police will file a report, conduct an investigation, and ultimately conclude no charges are warranted against the hero who saved lives. Elena should have been disturbed by his casual confidence, by the way he spoke about manipulating police investigations like it was routine. But she was too numb, too overwhelmed, too terrified to process anything beyond putting one foot in front of the other. The Mercedes was waiting at the curb, a different one from this morning, or maybe the same, Elena couldn't tell. Lorenzo opened the rear door himself, waiting until she was settled before closing it gently and circling to the other side. The interior smelled like leather and that dark cologne she'd noticed earlier. Elena sank into seats that cost more than her monthly rent, watching through tinted windows as Rosie's cafe receded behind them. Where are we going? She asked quietly. My estate, 40 minutes outside the city. Lorenzo's voice was calm, matter of fact. Secure perimeter, armed security, everything you need to be comfortable while we resolve your situation. Resolve my situation, Elena laughed, the sound cracking in her throat. You mean find Victor and get him to pay back $3 million he definitely doesn't have? Something like that. Elena turned to look at him properly. In the car's dim interior, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. You're not a businessman, are you? Not a normal one, anyway. No, Lorenzo agreed. I'm not. What are you? He met her eyes steadily. Someone who operates in the spaces between laws, who solves problems that can't be handled through official channels, who protects people when the system fails them. A criminal. By some definitions. Lorenzo's expression didn't change. By others, a necessary evil. It depends on your perspective. Elena should run, should demand he let her out, should take her chances with the police and witness protection and whatever slim hope existed for normal life. But she'd stopped believing in normal life somewhere between signing divorce papers and having a gun pressed to her temple. I'm pregnant, she said suddenly. Victor doesn't know. No one knows. It's his baby, and I'm pregnant, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. The confession hung in the air between them. Elena had no idea why she'd said it. This stranger, this criminal, this dangerous man who'd somehow decided she was worth saving. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Does that change what you want?" "What I want?" "Safety, protection, a chance to build something that isn't defined by Victor Hale's failures." Lorenzo's voice softened slightly. "Does being pregnant change whether you want those things?" Elena pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling nothing yet, but knowing something was there. Something innocent. Something that deserved better than what she'd been given. "No," she whispered. "It doesn't change anything. It just makes it more complicated." "Complicated I can work with." Lorenzo pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "I'll have Dr. Chen brought to the estate. She's discreet, thorough, and will make sure both you and the baby are healthy." "Why are you doing this?" Elena asked again, needing to understand. Lorenzo looked up from his phone, and for just a moment the mask slipped. She saw something raw beneath. Old grief, old guilt, old ghosts he'd been carrying too long. "Because someone should have done it for my mother," he said quietly. "And no one did." Before Elena could respond, his phone rang. Lorenzo answered in rapid Italian, or maybe Romanian, Elena couldn't tell, his expression hardening with each word. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. "What is it?" Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "They found Victor," Lorenzo said flatly. "He's in Miami, attempting to board a plane to Sao Paulo with $200,000 in cash, and your name's still listed as his emergency contact." Rage, clean and white-hot, flooded through Elena's chest. "He was running, with my name still attached to him." "Yes." "Using me as cover in case he got caught." "Likely." Elena closed her eyes, breathing through the fury. Through the betrayal that shouldn't surprise her anymore, but somehow still did. "What happens now?" she asked. Lorenzo's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. "Now we make sure Victor Hale understands that stealing $3 million has consequences, and that using you as a human shield was his final mistake." The car turned onto a private road, trees closing in on both sides. Through the windshield, Elena could see gates ahead, wrought iron, tall, with security cameras visible even in the fading light. She was entering Lorenzo De Luca's world now, leaving behind everything she'd known for a future she couldn't predict. But as the gates swung open and the estate came into view, sprawling and beautiful and terrifying in its implications, Elena made a choice. She would survive this, would protect the life growing inside her, would learn to navigate this dangerous new world. And if that meant becoming something other than the invisible waitress who'd signed divorce papers that morning, so be it. The Elena Ward who'd apologized for existing, who'd accepted neglect as love, who'd believed she deserved the scraps Victor threw her. That woman had died somewhere between the courthouse steps and a cafe floor stained with blood. Whoever she became next would be stronger, would be harder, would be whatever she needed to be to protect her child and claim the safety Lorenzo was offering. Even if safety came wrapped in darkness, even if protection meant owing debts to a man who operated outside the law, even if survival required becoming someone she didn't recognize. The car stopped in front of massive double doors. Lorenzo exited first, circling to open her door with the same careful courtesy he'd shown on the courthouse steps. "Welcome to your cage, Elena," he said softly, offering his hand once more. "I promise to make it as comfortable as possible." Elena took his hand and stepped out into her new life. Behind her, the gates closed with a final, echoing clang. Ahead, the doors opened to reveal marble floors and crystal chandeliers and a future she couldn't imagine. She walked forward anyway. Because what other choice did she have? The estate's interior was exactly what Elena expected, and nothing like she'd imagined simultaneously. Marble floors stretched in geometric patterns beneath her feet, reflecting light from chandeliers that belonged in museums. Original artwork lined the walls, pieces Elena recognized from coffee table books she'd flipped through in waiting rooms. A Monet. What looked like a Picasso. Something abstract and violent that might have been a Pollock. Money screened from every corner, but it was quiet money. Refined. The kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. "Your room is on the second floor, east wing." Lorenzo guided her through the entrance hall with a light touch on her elbow. "Dr. Chen will arrive within the hour. In the meantime, Maria will help you get settled." As if summoned, a woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway. She had kind eyes and capable hands, the sort of person who'd spent a lifetime managing households and keeping secrets. "Maria, this is Elena Ward. She'll be staying with us indefinitely." "Welcome, Miss Ward." Maria's accent was faintly Italian, softened by decades in America. "Come, I'll show you to your quarters." Elena glanced back at Lorenzo, suddenly uncertain about leaving his presence despite barely knowing him. He seemed to understand, offering a slight nod. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "No one enters this property without my permission. No one leaves without my knowledge. Rest. We'll talk after the doctor's visit." Elena followed Maria up a sweeping staircase, her hand trailing along a banister polished to mirror brightness. The east wing branched off the second-floor landing, a corridor lined with closed doors and more expensive art. Maria stopped at the third door, pushing it open to reveal a suite that made Elena's studio apartment look like a storage closet. The bedroom alone was larger than her entire living space had been. A king bed dominated one wall, dressed in cream linens that probably cost more than Elena's monthly wages. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across hardwood floors. A sitting area occupied one corner, plush chairs, a small bookshelf, a writing desk that looked antique. Two additional doors led to what Elena assumed were a closet and bathroom. "The bathroom is through there," Maria gestured to the left door. "I've stocked basic toiletries, but if you need anything specific, just ask. The closet has some clothing that should fit. Mr. DeLuca estimated your size." Elena's cheeks flushed. Lorenzo had assessed her measurements during their brief encounters with enough accuracy to stock a wardrobe? The thought should have disturbed her. Instead, it reinforced what she'd already suspected. Lorenzo DeLuca missed nothing. "Marcus will bring your personal items from your apartment within a few hours," Maria continued. "Dinner is served at 7 in the formal dining room, though Mr. DeLuca mentioned you might prefer a tray in your room tonight, given the circumstances." Elena looked around the room again, struggling to process the surreal shift her life had taken. This morning, she'd been signing divorce papers. This afternoon, she'd nearly been kidnapped. Now she stood in a bedroom that belonged in architectural magazines, waiting to see a private doctor about a pregnancy she'd barely begun to acknowledge. "It's overwhelming," Maria's voice gentled. "I understand. Take your time. The house can feel like a prison at first, but Mr. DeLuca is not an unkind jailer." The older woman's choice of words, jailer, prison, sent a chill through Elena. Was that what she'd become? A prisoner, however gilded the cage? "Can I leave?" The question emerged before Elena could stop it. "If I wanted to walk out right now, would he let me?" Maria's expression turned thoughtful. "Honestly, I don't know. Mr. DeLuca has never brought someone here under these particular circumstances before. But I suspect he would let you go if you truly wanted. The question is whether you'd survive long enough to regret it." The brutal honesty was somehow comforting. At least Maria wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was, protective custody with edges sharp enough to draw blood. "I'll stay," Elena said quietly. "I don't have anywhere else to go." "That's not true." Maria moved toward the door. "You have choices, Miss Ward, perhaps not good ones, but choices nonetheless. Try to remember that." After Maria left, Elena sank onto the bed, her legs finally giving out. The mattress was absurdly comfortable, probably memory foam and down and whatever else rich people slept on. She should explore the room, examine the closet, test the bathroom. Instead, she lay back, staring at the coffered ceiling, and finally let herself cry. The tears came hard and ugly, months of suppressed emotion breaking through walls she'd built to survive her marriage. She cried for the girl she'd been at 23, so desperate to be loved that she'd mistaken Victor's attention for affection. Cried for the years wasted trying to fix something that had been broken from the start. Cried for the baby growing inside her who deserved better than this mess. And she cried because some small, treacherous part of her felt safer in this stranger's house than she had in 5 years of marriage to a man who was supposed to protect her. The knock on the door came exactly 1 hour later. Elena had washed her face, changed into clothes from the closet, soft gray leggings and a cashmere sweater that fit perfectly, damn Lorenzo's observational skills, and was attempting to appear more composed than she felt. "Come in." A woman in her 40s entered, carrying a leather medical bag. She wore simple slacks and a blue blouse. her dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Professional, approachable, the kind of doctor who probably had a thriving private practice and made house calls for clients who valued discretion. Miss Ward, I'm Dr. Chen. Mr. DeLuca asked me to conduct a full examination and confirm your pregnancy status. Elena gestured to the sitting area. Thank you for coming on such short notice. It's my pleasure. Dr. Chen settled into one of the chairs, pulling out an iPad and stylus. Before we begin the physical exam, I need to take your medical history. Are you comfortable discussing this here, or would you prefer the bedroom for more privacy? Here's fine. The sitting area felt less intimate somehow, more clinical. Dr. Chen's questions were thorough and methodical. Previous pregnancies? None. Menstrual history? Regular until the last few months, when stress had made everything irregular. Last period? 8 weeks ago, give or take. Family medical history? Father unknown. Mother died of cancer when Elena was 16. Current symptoms: nausea in the mornings, tender breasts, exhaustion that went deeper than simple tiredness. And when did you take the home pregnancy test? This morning, right before I went to finalize my divorce. If Dr. Chen found the timing noteworthy, her expression didn't show it. 2 lines? Clearly positive? Yes. Have you experienced any cramping, bleeding, or severe abdominal pain? No, nothing like that. Dr. Chen made notes, then set the iPad aside. Let's do the examination. I'll need you to lie on the bed. I brought a portable ultrasound. We should be able to see something at 8 weeks. 10 minutes later, Elena lay on her back with her sweater pushed up and cold gel spread across her lower abdomen. Dr. Chen moved the ultrasound wand slowly, eyes fixed on the small screen. There. The doctor turned the screen so Elena could see. That's your baby. Elena's breath caught. On the grainy black and white display, a tiny form pulsed with life. So small. Barely more than a bean-shaped blur, but alive. Real. Growing inside her while her entire world collapsed. The heartbeat is strong, about 160 beats per minute, which is excellent. Dr. Chen adjusted the angle. Based on measurements, I'd estimate you're about 7 weeks and 4 days along. Due date would be approximately late May or early June. 7 weeks. Elena counted backward. That would have been early September, right before Victor stopped coming home entirely. One of the last times they'd been intimate before the marriage's final death spiral. Is everything okay? Elena forced herself to ask. With the baby? Developmentally, everything looks perfect. Dr. Chen removed the wand and handed Elena tissues to wipe off the gel. But I do have some concerns about you. Elena's stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? You're underweight for your height. Your blood pressure is elevated, likely stress-related, but worth monitoring. And your hands are shaking, which combined with what Mr. DeLuca told me about today's events suggests you're experiencing significant anxiety. Dr. Chen's expression remained kind but firm. Stress isn't good for you or the baby, Miss Ward. You need rest, proper nutrition, and a stable environment. I was doing fine until... Elena stopped herself. Was that true? Had she been doing fine, or had she just been surviving, convincing herself that exhaustion and constant worry were normal? You're safe now. Dr. Chen began packing her equipment. Use this time to heal. Let Mr. DeLuca's staff take care of you. Focus on the baby and yourself. After the doctor left, Elena found herself drawn to the window. The gardens below were spectacular, even in the fading light. Formal hedges, a fountain, walking paths that disappeared into wooded areas. Beautiful. Peaceful. Completely isolated from the real world. She pressed her palm to her stomach, still barely believing the life growing there. I'll keep you safe, she whispered, whatever it takes. I promise. The knock this time was quieter. Elena turned to find Lorenzo standing in the doorway, one hand raised mid-knock. May I come in? Elena nodded, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt. Him in her bedroom, however large and impersonal. He stayed near the door, maintaining distance that felt deliberately respectful. Dr. Chen gave me her report. Congratulations. Thank you. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. She said everything looks healthy. Good. Lorenzo's gaze was steady, unreadable. We need to discuss your situation. What happens next? Victor? Elena's voice hardened. You said you found him in Miami. My people intercepted him at the airport. He's currently being held at a secure location, waiting to explain where $3 million went and why he thought using his pregnant ex-wife as a human shield was acceptable. He doesn't know I'm pregnant. He does now. Lorenzo's smile was cold, along with every other relevant detail about how his choices endangered you and your child. Elena should have felt guilty about that, about Victor learning he was going to be a father while being held prisoner by criminals. But all she felt was grim satisfaction. What will you do to him? That depends. Lorenzo moved further into the room, settling into one of the sitting area chairs. What would you like me to do to him? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Elena knew what he was really asking. How much blood did she want on her hands? How far was she willing to let Lorenzo go to settle scores she'd been too powerless to settle herself? I want him to pay back the money he stole, Elena said slowly. I want him held accountable for putting me in danger. But I don't want him dead. Even after everything he's done? Even then. Elena sat on the bed's edge, meeting Lorenzo's dark eyes. He's still this baby's biological father. Someday, when my child asks about him, I don't want to say I had him killed. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. You're more merciful than he deserves. Maybe, but I have to live with my choices. I won't become someone who solves problems with murder. Fair enough. Lorenzo inclined his head slightly. Victor will repay his debt through other means. He has skills, accounting, connections in certain industries. He'll work for the people he stole from until his debt is satisfied. 10 years, give or take, if he survives that long. 10 years of effective slavery to criminals. It should have horrified Elena. Instead, she felt only cold justice. And the people who tried to kidnap me today are explaining their failure to their employer as we speak. Lorenzo's expression darkened. Which brings me to the more immediate problem. Viktor Sokolov, the man Victor stole from, is not known for accepting partial solutions. You remain a loose end, a vulnerability. So I'm stuck here. Elena kept her voice level, refusing to show the panic clawing at her chest. For how long? Until Sokolov is convinced you have no value as leverage. Lorenzo leaned forward, elbows on his knees, which requires demonstrating that you're under protection he can't challenge, that taking you would cost more than any possible benefit. How do you demonstrate that? By making you mine. The words fell between them like stones in still water. Elena's pulse kicked into overdrive. Yours, she repeated carefully. What exactly does that mean? It means you stay in this house under my protection. It means anyone who wants to hurt you goes through me first. It means Sokolov and people like him see you as an extension of my household, untouchable because I've claimed you. Like property, like family. Lorenzo's voice softened slightly. There's a difference, Elena. Property can be sold, traded, destroyed. Family is sacred. Even in my world, especially in my world, family is protected at any cost. Elena's head spun. You want me to pretend to be your family? Your, what, cousin? Sister? Lorenzo's smile was slight, humorless. Partner would be more accurate. Not romantically. Not unless you wanted that eventually, but as someone under my permanent protection. Someone whose safety is my personal concern. And everyone would just accept that. Believe it? They will when I say it. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. My word carries weight in the circles that matter. If I claim you, you stay claimed. Elena stood, pacing to the window and back. What about after? When this is over, when Sokolov accepts I'm worthless to him, what then? Do I just stay here forever? You stay as long as you want. Lorenzo rose as well, closing some of the distance between them. I'm not your ex-husband, Elena. I don't trap people in situations they want to leave. But I am offering you something he never did. Genuine safety, resources, a chance to raise your child without constantly looking over your shoulder. In exchange for what? Elena demanded. Men like you don't offer protection for free. What do you want from me? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, something complicated crossing his features. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out myself. But for now, all I want is for you to rest, recover. Let yourself be taken care of for once in your life." The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this dangerous, powerful man genuinely cared about her well-being without ulterior motives. But she'd learned the hard way that men always wanted something. "I need time to think about this," she said finally. "Take all the time you need." Lorenzo moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said this morning. You deserve better than what life's given you so far. I'd like to be part of changing that." After he left, Elena returned to the window, watching darkness settle over the gardens. Lights flickered on along the pathways, transforming the landscape into something from a fairy tale. Beautiful, enchanted, dangerous. Her phone buzzed. Marcus had brought her belongings. Elena found her battered suitcase outside the door, along with the box containing her few valuable possessions. She brought everything inside, unpacking with methodical care. Clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, photo album on the nightstand. The album fell open to her wedding photo. Elena and Victor on the courthouse steps. A different courthouse, a different lifetime. She'd worn a simple white dress from Target. He'd worn the same blue suit he wore to job interviews. Both of them smiling, convinced they were building something that would last. Elena traced Victor's face with one finger, feeling nothing. No love, no hate, just nothing. He'd become a stranger wearing familiar features, someone she'd once known and no longer recognized. She closed the album and shoved it in a drawer. The past could stay buried. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Maria appeared with a dinner tray, roasted chicken, vegetables that looked garden fresh, bread still warm from the oven. "Mr. DeLuca thought you might prefer eating in your room tonight," Maria said, setting the tray on the desk. "But he's invited you to join him for breakfast tomorrow, 8 o'clock in the morning room, if you're interested." "I'll be there." Elena surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. After Maria left, Elena ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her mind was already racing ahead, calculating angles and outcomes the way she'd learned to do during her marriage. Lorenzo wanted to claim her as family, offer protection in exchange for what? Her presence? Her trust? There had to be a cost. There was always a cost. But as she climbed into the absurdly comfortable bed and pulled the expensive linens up to her chin, Elena realized something that should have terrified her. She didn't care what the cost was, because for the first time in years, she felt safe. Morning arrived with weak sunlight filtering through curtains Elena didn't remember closing. She woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was before memory crashed back. Lorenzo's estate, protection, pregnancy. The surreal new reality she'd stepped into. A clock on the nightstand read 7:15. Elena showered in a bathroom that had more amenities than most spas, dressed in clothes from the closet, dark jeans and a soft blue sweater, and made her way downstairs. The morning room was smaller than the formal dining room she'd glimpsed yesterday, with windows overlooking the gardens and a table set for two. Lorenzo already sat reading a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper, with coffee steaming beside him. He looked up when Elena entered, setting the paper aside. "You found it. Good morning." "Good morning." Elena settled into the chair across from him, accepting coffee from a server who appeared and vanished like a ghost. "I wasn't sure I'd remember the way." "The house is confusing at first. Give it time." Lorenzo's attention remained steady on her face. "How did you sleep?" "Better than expected, honestly." Elena wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, drawing warmth. "Dr. Chen gave me something for the nausea. It helped." "Good. You need to eat." Lorenzo gestured to the sideboard where breakfast foods were arranged. "Help yourself to whatever appeals." Elena selected fruit and toast, not trusting her stomach with anything heavier. When she returned to the table, Lorenzo was watching her with that same assessing gaze that missed nothing. "You've made a decision," he observed. "I can see it in your posture." "That obvious?" "To me." Lorenzo sipped his coffee. "Tell me." Elena set down her fork, meeting his eyes directly. "I'll accept your protection. Stay here. Be part of your household, family, whatever you want to call it, on 3 conditions. Lorenzo's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm listening." "First, I need access to prenatal care, regular appointments with doctor. Chen, specialists if needed, everything to make sure the baby stays healthy. Already arranged. Dr. Chen will visit weekly, more often if necessary. Second, I want to work. Not at the cafe, obviously, but something. I can't just sit around this house for months doing nothing. Lorenzo considered this. What kind of work? I don't know yet, but I need purpose, structure, something that's mine. Reasonable. We'll find something suitable. Lorenzo paused. And the third condition? Elena took a breath, steadying herself. I want honesty. About what you do, who you are, what I'm getting into by staying here. No lies, no sugarcoating. If I'm going to be part of this world, I need to understand it. The silence stretched long enough to make Elena nervous. Then Lorenzo smiled, a real smile, not the cold, calculated expression she'd seen before. Deal, he said simply. Though fair warning, the honesty you're requesting may be harder to handle than you expect. I've handled worse. Yes, Lorenzo agreed quietly. You have. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, an understanding settling between them that felt almost like partnership. After, Lorenzo suggested a tour of the property. The estate was larger than Elena had realized, with multiple buildings beyond the main house. Guest cottages, a garage that held more cars than Elena could count, a greenhouse, a building Lorenzo identified as his office, where he conducted business. What kind of business exactly? Elena asked as they walked through gardens that probably required a full-time staff. Lorenzo glanced at her. You wanted honesty. Are you sure you're ready for it? Yes. I facilitate transactions between parties who can't use traditional channels. Money laundering, weapons acquisition, information brokering. I own legitimate businesses that serve as fronts and profit centers. Restaurants, import-export companies, real estate holdings. But the foundation of my operation is providing services that exist outside legal frameworks. Elena processed this. So you're a criminal? By legal definition, yes. By practical definition, I'm a businessman who operates in gray markets where government regulations don't reach. And Viktor Sokolov, the man Viktor stole from, runs a similar operation, though less refined. More violent. He made his fortune in arms dealing and human trafficking. Viktor worked for him briefly, had access to accounts, got greedy. Elena's stomach turned. Human trafficking. Which is why I have no love for Sokolov. Lorenzo's voice hardened. I have rules, Elena. Lines I don't cross. Children and unwilling adults are off limits. Always. Sokolov has no such restrictions. But you work with him. Do business? We exist in the same circles. Sometimes our interests align, but we're not allies. Lorenzo stopped walking, turning to face her fully. You need to understand something. The world I operate in isn't black and white. It's all shades of gray, and survival often means making compromises with people you'd rather destroy. Elena thought about this as they continued walking. And me staying here, you claiming me? That sends what message to Sokolov? That you're under my protection. That he can't touch you without starting a war he can't win. Lorenzo's expression was grim. It won't make you his friend, but it'll keep you alive. They'd reached a section of the gardens with a small pond, koi fish visible beneath the surface. Elena sat on a stone bench, watching the fish circle in eternal patterns. I should be more afraid than I am, she said quietly. Everything you've told me should send me running, but I just feel numb. Lorenzo sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. Trauma does that. You've experienced more violence in 24 hours than most people see in a lifetime. Give yourself time to process. Is that what your mother needed? Time? The question slipped out before Elena could stop it. Lorenzo went very still, and she immediately regretted asking. I'm sorry, that was... No. Lorenzo cut her off gently. You asked for honesty. That includes my history. He was quiet for a moment, watching the fish. My mother was an immigrant from Italy. Came to America at 19, pregnant and alone after my father abandoned her. She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, lived in neighborhoods where violence was routine. When I was 12, she caught the attention of a man who decided he wanted her. She refused. He killed her for it. Elena's chest tightened. Lorenzo, I'm so sorry. The police called it a mugging gone wrong. Closed the case within a week. I knew better, knew exactly who killed her and why. Lorenzo's hands clenched into fists. I was 12 years old, and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't protect her. Couldn't get justice. So I learned. Became someone who could protect people the law ignored. By becoming what the law fights against. Yes. Lorenzo met her eyes. I won't apologize for my choices, Elena. I've done things that would horrify you. Hurt people who probably didn't deserve the full extent of my retaliation. Built an empire on the backs of others' suffering. But I've also protected people who had nowhere else to turn. Given opportunities to those the system abandoned. And I've never ever let someone under my protection come to harm. Elena believed him. Maybe she was naive, maybe she was desperate, but sitting in this garden watching fish swim in circles while a dangerous man confessed his darkest truths, she believed every word. Thank you, she said quietly, for telling me. They sat in silence for a while, the morning sun warming the air around them. Elena found herself studying Lorenzo's profile, the sharp angles, the tension he carried in his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped scanning their surroundings, even in this supposedly secure location. He was beautiful in a harsh way, like a blade polished to lethal brightness, and he was offering her safety in a world that had never been safe. What happens now? Elena asked finally. What's the next step in this claiming process? Tonight, there's a gathering. People from my world, associates, allies, some rivals. They'll be told you're under my protection, that you're carrying a child I've chosen to acknowledge as family. Lorenzo's gaze remained on the pond. It will make you untouchable. And the child? Everyone will assume it's yours? Let them assume what they want. The truth is irrelevant compared to the protection it provides. Elena's hand moved to her stomach unconsciously. What if the baby looks like Victor? Then we say genetics are unpredictable, or we simply don't acknowledge the question. Lorenzo finally looked at her. In my world, family is defined by choice, not blood. If I claim this child is mine, that's what matters. The weight of what he was offering hit Elena fully. Not just protection for her, but for her baby. A father figure who'd actually show up, provide, care. Things Victor would never do even if he lived 1,000 years. Why? The question emerged raw, vulnerable. You could have helped me without this. Given me money, set me up somewhere safe. Why claim me? Why take on another man's child? Lorenzo was quiet for so long Elena thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because I know what it's like to be that child. To grow up wondering why your father didn't stay, why you weren't worth protecting. And I know what it's like to watch your mother break under the weight of doing it alone. He turned to face her fully. I can't save my mother, Elena, but I can damn well make sure her story doesn't repeat with you. Tears burned Elena's eyes. She blinked them back fiercely, refusing to cry in front of this man who was offering her everything she'd never thought to ask for. Okay, she whispered. Tonight, I'll do whatever you need me to do. Lorenzo's expression softened. Just be yourself. Let me handle everything else. They walked back to the house together, something unspoken settling between them. Not friendship exactly. Not yet. But the foundation of trust, built on brutal honesty and mutual understanding. Whatever came next, Elena thought, at least she wouldn't face it alone. And for now, that was enough. The dress arrived at 4 o'clock, delivered by a woman whose entire demeanor screamed personal stylist to the wealthy and dangerous. She introduced herself as Gabriella, swept into Elena's room with an armful of garment bags, and proceeded to transform the space into a temporary boutique. Mr. DeLuca said elegant but not ostentatious, Gabriella explained, unzipping the first bag to reveal a midnight blue gown. Something that announces you belong without screaming for attention. Elena touched the fabric, silk that felt like water against her fingers. I've never worn anything like this. Tonight you will. Gabriella's smile was kind but firm. These people read power in clothing, in posture, in every micro-expression. You need to look like someone worth protecting, someone who belongs at Lorenzo DeLuca's side. The words sent nervous energy skittering through Elena's chest. She'd agreed to this, understood the necessity, but the reality of walking into a room full of criminals and pretending she belonged felt impossible. Gabriella must have read her expression. Breathe, darling. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're simply presenting yourself as what you are, a woman under powerful protection. The rest is theater. They settled on the midnight blue dress after trying 3 others. It had a high neckline that felt modest, long sleeves that covered her arms, but the fabric draped in ways that suggested elegance Elena had never possessed. Gabriella paired it with simple jewelry, diamond studs that were probably real, a delicate bracelet, and worked on Elena's hair until it fell in soft waves past her shoulders. There, Gabriella stepped back, critical eye assessing. Look at yourself. Elena turned to the full-length mirror and barely recognized her reflection. The woman staring back looked refined, composed, expensive. Not a waitress from a cafe, not someone who'd signed divorce papers 24 hours ago. Someone new, someone stronger. Mr. DeLuca will be pleased, Gabriella said with satisfaction. You look like you belong to his world. After Gabriella left, Elena sat in front of the mirror, studying the stranger wearing her face. Her hand moved to her stomach, still flat, still showing no signs of the life growing inside. We can do this? She whispered to the baby who couldn't hear her yet. We're survivors. We've survived worse. The knock came at 7:30. Lorenzo stood in the hallway wearing a black suit that probably cost more than Elena's car had. He looked dangerous and elegant simultaneously, every inch the powerful crime boss he was. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. You look beautiful. Gabriella's work, not mine. Elena smoothed the dress nervously. Is this appropriate? I've never been to anything like this before. It's perfect. Lorenzo offered his arm. And for the record, Gabriella enhanced what was already there. The beauty is yours. Elena's cheeks warmed as she took his arm. They descended the staircase together, her heels clicking against marble. Voices drifted from the formal living room. Multiple conversations, laughter that sounded forced, the careful politeness of people who might kill each other under different circumstances. Remember, Lorenzo said quietly as they approached the entrance, you don't have to say much. Stay close to me. Let me do the talking, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, tell me immediately. Elena nodded, throat too tight for words. The living room had been transformed into something from a movie. Crystal glasses catching light, servers moving silently with champagne, people dressed in clothing that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everyone turned when Lorenzo entered, conversations pausing mid-sentence. Ladies and gentlemen, Lorenzo's voice carried authority that silenced the room completely. Thank you for coming. I have an announcement that affects several ongoing situations. He guided Elena forward slightly, his hand warm and steady on the small of her back. She forced herself to meet the eyes watching her, assessing, calculating, some openly hostile. This is Elena Ward. As of today, she is under my permanent protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or attempts to use her as leverage against me or anyone else will answer directly to me. Lorenzo's tone left no room for misinterpretation. She is family. She carries my name and my backing. This is not negotiable. The silence that followed felt crushing. Elena kept her chin up, refusing to show the terror coursing through her veins. These people were killers, criminals, dangerous in ways she couldn't begin to understand. And Lorenzo had just painted a target on her back by claiming her as his. An older man stepped forward, silver-haired, expensive suit, eyes that had seen too much violence to ever forget. Bold move, Lorenzo, claiming another man's cast-off wife. Ex-wife, Lorenzo corrected coolly. And Elena's past is irrelevant to her future under my protection. Unless you have concerns you'd like to voice, Marcus? The challenge hung in the air like a blade. Marcus studied Elena for a long moment, then slowly smiled. No concerns. Simply observing that you're expanding your family unusually quickly. First Victor Hale's mess, now his woman. One might wonder if you're growing soft. One might wonder if Marcus Volkov is questioning my judgment. Lorenzo's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. That would be unwise. Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender. No offense intended. I'm merely stating what others are thinking. Then let me be clear for everyone thinking it. Lorenzo's gaze swept the room. Elena's connection to Victor Hale is precisely why she needs protection. Sokolov's people already attempted to use her as leverage for Hale's debts. That ends now. She is mine, and anyone who forgets that will learn why I don't make idle threats. A woman in a red dress that matched her lipstick moved closer. And the child? Rumor says she's pregnant with Hale's baby. You're claiming another man's bloodline? Elena's breath caught. How did they already know? Dr. Chen wouldn't have talked, which meant Lorenzo's security had leaks, or these people had intelligence networks that operated at terrifying speed. I'm claiming family, Lorenzo said flatly. Blood matters less than loyalty in my world. The child will be raised as a DeLuca, with all the protection and resources that entails. Any questions about paternity are irrelevant and unwelcome. The woman's smile was sharp. How progressive of you, Lorenzo. I'm sure your mother would be proud. Something flickered in Lorenzo's eyes, pain quickly masked. My mother understood protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. She would absolutely approve. The conversation slowly resumed, though Elena felt eyes tracking her movements as Lorenzo guided her through the room. He introduced her to person after person, names she wouldn't remember, faces that blurred together, handshakes that felt like threats wrapped in civility. That's Sokolov's representative. Lorenzo's voice was barely a whisper as they approached a man with cold blue eyes and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Dmitry Kozlov. He's here to assess the situation firsthand. Dmitry's gaze locked onto Elena with predatory intensity. So this is the woman causing all the trouble. She doesn't look worth $3 million. Good thing her value isn't determined by Victor Hale's debts. Lorenzo's hand tightened slightly on Elena's waist, a subtle warning to stay silent. Hale is working off what he owes. Elena has nothing to do with those transactions, except she was married to the thief. Dmitry circled them slowly, studying Elena like a piece of meat he was considering purchasing. Makes her complicit, some would argue. Some would be wrong. Lorenzo matched his movements, keeping Elena slightly behind him. She filed for divorce weeks before Hale's theft was discovered, had no knowledge of his activities, no access to his accounts, no benefit from his crimes. She's a civilian caught in crossfire not of her making. A pregnant civilian. Dmitry's smile was cruel. Convenient timing for you to claim her, no? Right after she becomes vulnerable? Elena found her voice before Lorenzo could respond. I became vulnerable the moment I married a man I didn't know was a criminal. Lorenzo offered protection when everyone else saw me as collateral. If that offends you, I suggest you examine why my safety is less important than your employer's revenge. The room went silent. Dmitry's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across his features before settling back into cold assessment. She has spirit, he said to Lorenzo. I see why you claimed her. Among other reasons, Lorenzo's tone suggested the conversation was over. Tell Sokolov that Elena Ward is off limits. Permanently. If he has issues with that arrangement, he can address them with me directly. Dmitry studied them both for another long moment, then inclined his head. I'll relay your message. Though I suspect Victor will want to discuss this face-to-face. I'm available whenever he'd like to schedule a meeting. Lorenzo's smile was cold. Provided he comes alone and unarmed? That seems unlikely. Then I suppose we'll continue communicating through intermediaries. After Dmitry moved away, Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Did I just make things worse by talking? No. Lorenzo's voice held something that might have been pride. You made them better. Dmitry respects strength. Seeing you defend yourself instead of hiding behind me carried more weight than anything I could have said. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. Lorenzo guided her toward a quieter corner of the room. You're doing remarkably well for someone who was signing divorce papers yesterday. Elena laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that she quickly suppressed. Yesterday feels like a lifetime ago. In many ways it was. Lorenzo accepted champagne from a passing server, handed it to Elena, then took one for himself. You died in that courthouse, and someone new was born. Someone who doesn't accept being treated as disposable. Elena sipped the champagne, barely tasting it. Around them, conversations continued, deals being negotiated, alliances being formed, threats being made with smiles and polite words. This was Lorenzo's world, a place where violence wore expensive suits and murder was discussed over imported wine. And somehow, impossibly, she was supposed to belong here. Lorenzo. A new voice interrupted, female, accented with something Eastern European. A stunning woman in her 40s approached, dark hair swept into an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat. Introduce me to your newest acquisition. Elena, this is Katerina Volkov, Marcus's sister and one of the more formidable people you'll meet. Lorenzo's tone held genuine respect. Katerina, Elena Ward. Katerina's handshake was firm, her gaze assessing but not hostile. Ward. That was your married name? Yes, I'm keeping it until the paperwork processes to reclaim my maiden name. Smart. Distance yourself from Hale however you can. Katerina's expression softened slightly. I heard what happened at the cafe. That must have been terrifying. It was. Elena saw no point in pretending otherwise. I'm grateful Lorenzo's people were there. As you should be. Lorenzo has many faults, but failing to protect those under his care isn't one of them. Katerina glanced at Lorenzo with something that might have been affection. He collected strays even as a boy. I see some things never change. Elena isn't a stray, Lorenzo said quietly. She's family. Family. Katerina repeated the word thoughtfully. Interesting choice of words. Tell me, Elena, do you understand what being Lorenzo's family means in our world? Elena met her gaze steadily. It means I'm protected. It means anyone who hurts me answers to him. And it means I'm bound to this life, whether I fully understand it or not. Close. Katerina's smile held approval. It also means you're a weakness, a pressure point that can be exploited if someone is desperate or stupid enough. It means every decision Lorenzo makes from now on will be calculated against the risk to you. It means you've become both his greatest strength and his most vulnerable liability. The brutal honesty should have frightened Elena. Instead, it clarified things. Then I'll have to make sure I'm worth the risk. Katerina laughed, genuine amusement lighting her features. I like her, Lorenzo. Try not to get her killed. After Katerina moved away, Elena turned to Lorenzo. Is she right? Am I making you vulnerable? Everyone we care about makes us vulnerable. Lorenzo's expression was difficult to read. That's the price of connection. But vulnerability isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's what keeps us human. Elena wanted to ask what he meant, but a commotion near the entrance cut off the question. A man pushed through the crowd, disheveled, desperate, eyes wild with fear. Marcus's security moved to intercept, but Lorenzo held up a hand. Let him through. The man stumbled forward, and Elena's heart stopped. Victor. He looked terrible. Weight lost, dark circles under bloodshot eyes, expensive suit rumpled like he'd slept in it. His gaze locked onto Elena, and something that might have been relief crossed his features. Elena, his voice cracked. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you. Don't. Elena cut him off, surprised by the steadiness in her tone. Don't pretend you were worried. You were in Miami trying to flee the country when Lorenzo's people found you. Victor's attention snapped to Lorenzo, fear replacing relief. You're the one holding me prisoner. I'm the one keeping you alive, Lorenzo corrected coldly. Sokolov's people wanted you dead. I offered an alternative arrangement that benefits everyone. By taking my wife? Victor's voice rose. By claiming my child? Ex-wife, Elena said flatly. We're divorced, Victor. You didn't even show up to sign the papers. Because I was trying to fix things. Victor looked between them, desperation mounting. The money, I can get it back. I just need time. You had time. Lorenzo's voice was ice. You spent it running instead of fixing the mess you created. Now Elena pays the price for your cowardice. Elena. Victor ignored Lorenzo entirely, focusing on her with an intensity she'd never seen during their marriage. Come with me. We can disappear together, start over somewhere they can't find us. Elena laughed, bitter and sharp. Are you insane? You stole $3 million from a man who traffics in human lives, put a target on my back, and now you want me to run with you? What part of our marriage made you think I'd be that stupid? I'm the father of your child. Victor's face flushed with anger and shame. That has to mean something. It means you're biologically responsible for half of this baby's DNA, Elena said coldly. Nothing more. You stopped being my husband when you stopped coming home. You stopped being someone I could trust when the credit card bills started arriving. And you stopped being worth saving when you left me alone to face consequences you created. The room had gone silent again, everyone watching the drama unfold. Elena felt exposed, vulnerable, but she refused to back down. Victor needed to understand this was over. Not just the marriage, but any claim he thought he had on her life. Lorenzo didn't force me to stay here, Elena continued, her voice carrying across the room. He offered protection when you offered nothing. He claimed our child when you were boarding a plane to Brazil. He gave me safety when all you gave me was danger. So no, Victor, you're not my husband. You're not this baby's father in any way that matters. You're just the man whose mistakes finally caught up with him. Victor's face crumpled. Elena, please. 10 years, Lorenzo interrupted, his tone final. You work off your debt, stay out of Elena's life, and maybe you survive to see freedom again. Or you keep pushing, and I'll let Sokolov's people have you. Your choice. The math was simple enough that even Victor's desperation couldn't obscure it. He looked at Elena one last time, pleading, broken, pathetic, in ways she'd never seen during their marriage. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. Elena wanted to feel something, pity, anger, residual love, anything, but she just felt empty, watching this man she'd once promised to love forever, reduced to begging in a room full of criminals. Goodbye, Victor. Lorenzo's security escorted him out. Elena stood very still, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes assessing her, judging her, calculating what her public rejection of Victor Hale meant for future negotiations and power dynamics. That was well done. Lorenzo's voice was quiet, meant only for her. Difficult, but necessary. I meant every word. Elena's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. He stopped being my husband long before the divorce papers. Tonight just made it official. Still, saying it publicly in front of these people, that took courage. Lorenzo's hand found the small of her back again, steady and warm. Let's get you some air. He guided her through the crowd to French doors that opened onto a terrace. The night air was cold and clean, washing away the oppressive atmosphere of the gathering. Elena breathed deeply, letting the chill ground her. I need to ask you something, she said after a moment, and I need the truth. Always. What did you do to Victor before tonight, when your people first found him? What happened? Lorenzo was quiet for a beat. He was interrogated, extensively. We needed to know where the money went, who else was involved, what other debts he'd accumulated. The interrogation wasn't gentle. You heard him. My people did, yes, following my orders. Lorenzo's expression remained neutral. Do you want details? Or is knowing it happened sufficient? Elena considered. Knowing is sufficient. I don't need the details to understand that actions have consequences. He'll survive the 10 years. Lorenzo leaned against the terrace railing, looking out at dark gardens. Uncomfortable, unpleasant, but alive. More mercy than he showed you. More mercy than he deserves, Elena agreed. She moved to stand beside Lorenzo, their shoulders nearly touching. What happens now? With Sokolov, with his representative being here tonight. Now we wait. Dmitri will report back that you're genuinely under my protection, that Victor has been dealt with, that pursuing you further would cost more than it's worth. Lorenzo glanced at her. Sokolov's smart enough to cut his losses, especially since Victor's working off the debt. And if he's not smart enough, then we handle it. Lorenzo's tone suggested handling would involve violence Elena didn't want to imagine. But I don't think it'll come to that. You impressed people tonight, Elena. Showed spine, intelligence, loyalty. Those qualities are valued in my world. I just said what needed saying. Elena rubbed her arms against the cold. Victor needed to know we're done. Everyone needed to know I chose this, that I'm here because I want protection, not because you forced me. Did you? Lorenzo turned to face her fully. Choose this? Or did circumstances force your hand until this was the only viable option? It was a fair question. Elena thought about it, really considered what had brought her to this terrace, this night, this impossible new life. Both, she said finally. Circumstances forced the choice, but I still made it. I could have gone to the police, tried witness protection, taken my chances that Sokolov would lose interest. Instead, I'm standing here in a dress that costs more than my monthly rent, playing the role of crime boss's protected family. That's a choice, even if it was made under pressure. And the baby? Lorenzo's gaze dropped briefly to her still flat stomach. How do you feel about me claiming your child? Elena's hand moved protectively to her abdomen. Honestly? Relieved. This baby deserves a father who'll actually show up, provide, protect. Victor would have done none of those things. You're offering all of them. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But I need to know what you expect in return. Not just from me, but from this child as they grow up. Are you expecting them to join your organization eventually? To become part of this world? I expect them to have choices, Lorenzo said quietly. Real choices, not the illusion of options I had growing up. If they want this life, I'll train them properly. If they want something legitimate, I'll support that too. My money can buy education, opportunities, futures that have nothing to do with my operations. You sound like you've thought about this. I have. For years. Lorenzo's expression turned distant. I never planned to have children. This life is too dangerous, too uncertain. But claiming your baby, it feels right in ways I can't fully articulate, like a chance to do for them what no one did for me. Elena studied his profile in the moonlight. Lorenzo De Luca was a dangerous man who'd done terrible things, but he was also someone who'd been that scared 12-year-old unable to protect his mother, someone who'd built an empire on the foundation of ensuring others never felt that powerless. Can I ask what happened? She said softly. After your mother died, where did you go? Foster care initially, group homes. Learned quickly that showing weakness got you destroyed. Lorenzo's voice was flat, reciting facts divorced from emotion. Left at 16, found work with people who didn't care about legal employment age. Proved useful, proved loyal. Moved up through the ranks until I had enough capital and connections to start my own operation. How old were you? 23 when I made my first significant acquisition. 25 when I established myself as someone worth respecting. 30 when I became someone people feared. He looked at her. I'm 38 now. Spent half my life building this empire. And sometimes I wonder what I'm building it for. The vulnerability in that admission cracked something in Elena's chest. She'd been so focused on her own fear, her own survival, that she hadn't fully considered what Lorenzo was offering wasn't just protection. It was purpose, family, things he'd been denied just as thoroughly as she had. Build it for us, she heard herself say. For me and this baby. For the family you're choosing instead of the one you lost. Lorenzo's eyes widened slightly, surprise giving way to something warmer, more human than she'd seen from him yet. You'd let me? Even knowing what I am? I know what you are, Elena agreed, but I also know what you've done for me. The choice you've made to protect instead of exploit. That means something, Lorenzo. Maybe everything. The terrace doors opened behind them. Marcus appeared, his expression carefully neutral. Forgive the interruption. Sokolov's calling. He wants to speak with you directly. Lorenzo's demeanor shifted instantly, warmth replaced by cold calculation. Put him through to my office. Elena, stay here with Marcus. I'll return shortly. Be careful, Elena said before she could stop herself. Lorenzo's smile was slight but genuine. Always. After he left, Marcus moved to stand beside Elena at the railing. They stood in silence for a moment before he spoke. You care about him already. It wasn't a question. Elena considered denying it, then decided honesty was simpler. I care about what he represents, safety, protection, someone who actually follows through on promises. Lorenzo always follows through. Marcus's tone held certainty. Sometimes that's admirable. Sometimes it's terrifying. Make sure you understand which version you're dealing with before you get too attached. Is that a warning? It's advice from someone who's known Lorenzo since we were teenagers stealing cars together. Marcus glanced at her. He's a good man by the standards of our world, but our world has different standards than yours. Don't forget that. Elena absorbed this. What should I expect from Sokolov's call? Posturing, threats wrapped in politeness, possibly a final attempt to claim you before accepting Lorenzo's ownership. Marcus's expression remained neutral. Lorenzo will handle it. He always does. And if he can't, then people die. Marcus said it so casually, Elena almost missed the gravity. That's how conflicts resolve in our world. Someone pushes too hard, boundaries get crossed, bodies drop until a new equilibrium establishes itself. The brutal honesty was starting to feel familiar. Elena appreciated it in a perverse way. Better to understand the rules than pretend this world operated on normal social contracts. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest. Lorenzo values you. That makes you valuable to those loyal to him." Marcus smiled slightly. "Plus, you told Dmitry Kozlov to examine why your safety mattered less than revenge. Anyone brave or stupid enough to do that deserves respect." They returned inside after a few more minutes. The gathering was winding down, people making their departures with elaborate courtesy. Elena accepted congratulations and thinly veiled threats with equal composure, learning to read the subtext beneath polite words. Lorenzo reappeared 30 minutes later. His expression revealed nothing, but Elena had learned to read the tension in his shoulders. "How bad?" she asked quietly. "Manageable." Sokolov accepted the arrangement with conditions. He wants quarterly updates on Victor's work, a percentage of my next 3 major transactions, and a meeting, him and me, neutral territory, next month. That sounds dangerous. It's necessary. We need to formalize the peace. Lorenzo's hand found her waist again. But that's my concern, not yours. Tonight went well. You impressed the right people, stood your ground, showed you're not someone who will be easily intimidated. I was terrified the entire time. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Lorenzo guided her toward the door as the last guest departed. But you didn't let it control you. That's what matters. They climbed the stairs together, silence stretching comfortable between them. At Elena's door, Lorenzo paused. "I know this is overwhelming, too much, too fast, but you did exceptionally well tonight. I survived. There's a difference. Not in my world." Lorenzo's smile was slight. Survival is the ultimate success. Everything else is just details. Elena laughed, tired, genuine. "Good night, Lorenzo, and thank you for everything." "Good night, Elena. Sleep well." She watched him walk away, then entered her room and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the expensive dress. Tomorrow she'd process everything. Victor's appearance, Sokolov's acceptance, the reality of her new life. Tonight, she was simply too exhausted. But as sleep claimed her, Elena realized something that should have terrified her and somehow didn't. She was beginning to feel safe. And in Lorenzo De Luca's dangerous world, safety was the rarest gift of all. The next 3 weeks settled into an unexpected rhythm that felt almost normal despite everything that wasn't. Elena woke each morning to sunlight streaming through expensive curtains, ate breakfast with Lorenzo when his schedule permitted, and slowly learned to navigate the strange new world she'd entered. Dr. Chen visited twice weekly, monitoring the pregnancy with meticulous care. The baby was growing perfectly, heartbeat strong, measurements right on track. Elena was 12 weeks now, the first trimester nearly complete, and the constant nausea had finally begun to ease. "You're doing remarkably well," Dr. Chen said during the latest examination, removing the ultrasound wand and handing Elena tissues. "Blood pressure's normalizing. You've gained back the weight you'd lost, and the baby's thriving. How are you feeling emotionally?" Elena considered the question while cleaning gel from her stomach. "Better than I expected. Calmer. It's strange. I should be more anxious given everything that's happened, but I just feel settled. Safety does that." Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet. "Your body's no longer in constant survival mode. It can focus on the pregnancy instead of stress management." After the appointment, Elena found Maria in the kitchen preparing lunch. The older woman had become an unexpected ally, teaching Elena the unspoken rules of Lorenzo's household with patient kindness. "Mr. De Luca asked if you'd join him in his office after you eat," Maria said, sliding a plate of pasta across the counter. "Nothing urgent," he said, "just wants to discuss something." Elena's stomach tightened with old instincts. Men asking to talk usually meant bad news. But Lorenzo wasn't Victor. 3 weeks of living under his roof had proven that much. She found him 40 minutes later in the office building she'd seen during her first tour. The interior was surprisingly modest. Functional furniture, banks of computer monitors, filing cabinets that probably contained information worth killing for. Lorenzo sat behind a desk covered in paperwork, reading glasses perched on his nose in a way that made him look almost scholarly. "You wanted to see me?" Elena knocked on the open door frame. Lorenzo looked up, setting the glasses aside. "Elena, come in. How did the doctor's appointment go?" "Everything's perfect. Baby's healthy, I'm healthy, no complications." Elena settled into the chair across from him. "Dr. Chen says I'm doing better than most first-time mothers at this stage." "Good. That's good." Lorenzo leaned back, studying her with that assessing gaze she'd learned to recognize. "I wanted to discuss your request about working." Elena's pulse quickened. She'd mentioned wanting purpose, structure, something beyond being decorative protection, but she hadn't expected Lorenzo to actually follow through. "I've been thinking about where your skills would be most useful," Lorenzo continued. "You mentioned working at the cafe for 3 years. Rosie spoke highly of your organizational abilities when I contacted her, said you practically ran the place during her hip surgery last year." "You called Rosie?" Elena wasn't sure whether to be touched or concerned. "I wanted references. Your resume has gaps, but the people who've worked with you seem universally impressed by your competence." Lorenzo pulled a folder from his desk drawer. "I'm opening a legitimate business, an upscale cafe and bakery in the city. High-end clientele, artisanal products, the kind of place that attracts professionals with disposable income." Elena blinked. "A cafe?" "Also a very effective front for certain financial transactions, but primarily a cafe, yes." Lorenzo's smile was slight. "I need someone to manage it. Someone who understands the service industry, can handle demanding customers, knows quality when they see it. Someone I trust not to ask too many questions about the occasional unusual delivery or meeting in the back office." The implications settled over Elena like a weighted blanket. He was offering her work, purpose, involvement in his operations, but carefully, controllably, in ways that kept her mostly legitimate. "You want me to run a cafe that's secretly a money laundering operation?" Elena said slowly. "I want you to run a cafe that happens to also serve certain auxiliary business purposes." Lorenzo's tone was careful. "You wouldn't be directly involved in anything illegal. You'd simply manage the public-facing business while being aware that some aspects exist beneath the surface. Can you live with that distinction?" Elena thought about the last 3 weeks, about learning to accept security funded by criminal enterprise, about living in luxury paid for by operations she didn't fully understand, about becoming family to a man who solved problems with violence. "Yes," she said quietly, "I can live with that, as long as I'm not actively hurting anyone." "The cafe won't hurt anyone. It'll employ people legitimately, pay taxes, serve excellent coffee and pastries. The fact that it also processes certain financial transactions is entirely separate." Lorenzo pushed the folder across the desk. "Look it over. Building plans, proposed menu, staffing budget. If you're interested, the position is yours." Elena opened the folder with trembling hands. The cafe was beautiful, exposed brick, industrial lighting, comfortable seating that invited lingering. The menu featured items she'd only dreamed of serving at Rosie's. The staffing budget was generous enough to hire quality people and pay them well. "This is incredible," she breathed. "When would it open?" 3 months. Gives us time for build-out, hiring, training. Also gives you time to get through the worst of the pregnancy before taking on full management responsibilities." Lorenzo's expression softened slightly. "I'm not asking you to sacrifice your health or the baby. The cafe will still be there after you've recovered from delivery." Tears burned Elena's eyes unexpectedly. She blinked them back, frustrated by the pregnancy hormones that made everything feel amplified. "Why are you doing this? The protection I understand. You needed to neutralize a threat. But this? Giving me actual work, a real future? What do you get out of it?" Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. "Peace," he said finally. "Knowing I'm building something that matters, that the money I've made through questionable means is creating legitimate opportunities. That maybe my mother would see this and understand I'm not just the monster circumstances forced me to become." The raw honesty in his voice cracked something in Elena's chest. She'd been so focused on her own survival that she hadn't fully considered Lorenzo might need saving too, not from external threats, but from the isolation that came with being someone everyone feared. "I'll do it," Elena said. "I'll run your cafe and make it the best front for money laundering this city has ever seen." Lorenzo's laugh was surprised, genuine. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, though perhaps don't advertise that particular aspect to the health inspectors." They spent the next hour going over details, hiring timelines, vendor relationships, the delicate balance between legitimate business and criminal enterprise. Elena found herself energized in ways she hadn't felt since before her marriage, ideas flowing freely about how to make the cafe successful on both fronts. "You're good at this," Lorenzo observed, as Elena outlined a staffing structure that would allow for discreet meetings without disrupting customer service. "Strategic thinking, seeing problems before they develop. Have you ever considered you might have been wasted as a waitress?" "I considered it regularly," Elena admitted. "But considering something and having opportunities to change it are different things. Victor didn't want me working at all, said it reflected poorly on him that his wife had to serve people. I did it anyway because we needed money, but he made sure I felt guilty about every shift." Lorenzo's expression darkened. "He was intimidated by your competence, threatened by the idea you might realize you didn't need him." "Probably." Elena closed the folder, meeting Lorenzo's eyes. "But that's over now. I'm building something new, something that's mine." "Ours," Lorenzo corrected gently. "I'm funding it, but you'll run it. That makes it a partnership." The word hung between them, partnership. Not ownership, not employment, something more equal than Elena had expected. She studied Lorenzo's face, seeing past the dangerous exterior to the complicated man underneath. "Can I ask you something personal?" she ventured. "Always." "Have you ever been married? Had serious relationships?" Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, considering. "No to marriage. As for relationships, nothing that survived more than a few months. This life doesn't lend itself to traditional partnerships. The risk, the secrecy, the constant awareness that anyone I care about becomes a target." He paused. "Easier to keep people at a distance than watch them suffer for my choices." "That sounds lonely." "It is." Lorenzo's admission was quiet. "But loneliness is safer than grief. I learned that at 12 and haven't forgotten." Elena understood that logic intimately. She'd kept everyone at arm's length during her marriage, afraid of letting people see how badly things had deteriorated. Loneliness as armor against worse pain. "What if we're both wrong?" she said softly. "What if isolation isn't safer? What if it's just another kind of prison?" Lorenzo's dark eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Then perhaps we're breaking out together." The moment stretched taut between them, not quite romantic, but intimate in ways that had nothing to do with physical attraction. Two damaged people recognizing similar wounds in each other, finding unexpected comfort in shared understanding. Maria's knock on the door broke the spell. "Mr. DeLuca, your 2 o'clock is here. Mr. Volkov and his sister. Send them to the meeting room. I'll be there shortly." After Maria left, Lorenzo stood, smoothing his suit. "Business. The less glamorous aspects of running a criminal empire." "Go." Elena gathered the cafe folder. "I'll look over these plans more carefully. Start thinking about hiring criteria." "Elena." Lorenzo caught her hand as she passed his desk. "Thank you for agreeing to this, for trusting me enough to build something together." His hand was warm, strong, completely enveloping hers. Elena found herself acutely aware of the contact, the first truly intentional touch between them beyond necessary guidance in public. "Thank you for giving me something to build," she said quietly. She left before the moment could become more complicated, retreating to her room with the folder clutched to her chest like treasure. Spreading the plans across her bed, Elena let herself dream for the first time in years. Not about escape or survival, but about creating something beautiful and functional and hers. The baby kicked, barely a flutter, so faint she almost missed it. Elena's hand flew to her stomach, tears spilling over as she felt that tiny life assert its presence. "You're going to grow up in a cafe," she whispered. "Learn to make the perfect espresso before you can drive. Probably do your homework at the corner table while I handle the dinner rush. It's not a normal life, but it's ours." The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Elena threw herself into cafe preparations with single-minded focus. She interviewed potential staff members at the estate, baristas, bakers, servers, learning to read people the way Lorenzo had taught her. Not just their skills, but their discretion, their ability to ignore certain irregularities without becoming liabilities. This one. Elena tapped a resume after the 15th interview. Sarah Chen. She's got the technical skills, but more importantly, she grew up in Chinatown, knows how to mind her business and not ask questions. Lorenzo reviewed the file with approval. Good instincts. What about the head baker position? Still looking? Everyone with the right skills either wants creative control or can't handle the hours. Elena frowned at her notes. We need someone brilliant but willing to follow direction. That's a rare combination. You'll find them. Lorenzo's confidence in her abilities had become steadying rather than pressure. You're good at seeing potential others miss. The cafe build-out was progressing faster than expected. Elena visited the site weekly, watching walls go up and equipment get installed. The space was transforming from empty shell to her vision, each detail coming together exactly as planned. She was examining tile samples one afternoon when her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena almost declined, then remembered Lorenzo's instructions. Always answer, never assume a call is insignificant. Hello? Mrs. Hale. The voice was male, accented, coldly polite. Or should I say Mrs. Ward? I understand you've reclaimed your maiden name. Ice slid down Elena's spine. She recognized that voice. Dmitry Kozlov, Sokolov's representative from the gathering. What do you want? Elena kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. Merely to congratulate you on your business venture? A cafe. How quaint. Dmitry's tone suggested he found nothing quaint about it. Mr. Sokolov wanted me to reach out personally. Ensure you understand that while your arrangement with Mr. DeLuca is respected, it doesn't grant immunity from all consequences. What consequences? Elena looked around the construction site, suddenly aware of how exposed she was. Lorenzo's security was somewhere nearby. They always were. But she couldn't see them. Your ex-husband's debt is being paid through labor, yes. But there are other debts. Personal debts. Violations of trust that require satisfaction beyond mere financial compensation. Dmitry paused meaningfully. Mr. Sokolov wanted you to know that Victor Hale's punishment will be thorough, and that children should not be raised believing their father's sins go unpunished. The threat was clear. They were going to kill Victor, not immediately, but eventually. And they wanted Elena to know, to live with that knowledge. Victor Hale isn't my concern anymore, Elena said carefully. What happens to him is between him and your employer. Quite right. I'm simply ensuring you understand the full scope of consequences when one steals from the wrong people. Dmitry's voice hardened. Do give Mr. DeLuca my regards. Tell him his meeting with Mr. Sokolov has been moved up. Next week, neutral territory. We'll send details. The line went dead. Elena stood frozen, phone clutched in her shaking hand. Marcus appeared from behind a support beam, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. What happened? His voice was sharp, professional. Dmitry Kozlov called. Threatened Victor. Moved up Lorenzo's meeting with Sokolov. Elena forced herself to breathe slowly. I'm fine. Just rattled. We need to get you back to the estate, now. Marcus was already guiding her toward the exit. Lorenzo needs to know about this immediately. The drive back felt longer than usual, every shadow a potential threat. Elena tried to calm herself. Dmitry had made a phone call, nothing more. But the violation of having her personal number, of being contacted directly, felt like fingers closing around her throat. Lorenzo met them at the estate's entrance, fury barely contained beneath his controlled exterior. Tell me everything, word for word. Elena recounted the conversation in Lorenzo's office while Marcus stood guard outside. She watched Lorenzo's expression darken with each detail, his hands clenching into fists that wanted to hit something. He threatened you. Lorenzo's voice was deadly quiet. Made you afraid in your own business. Contacted you directly despite knowing you're under my protection. He threatened Victor, not me, Elena corrected. I was just the messenger. The threat to Victor was the message. Making you afraid was the point. Lorenzo pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. This changes things. Sokolov's playing games, testing boundaries.
seeing how far he can push before I respond. What are you going to do? Lorenzo looked up, and Elena saw something frightening in his eyes. Not anger exactly, something colder, more calculated. The face of a man who'd built an empire on making examples of people who crossed him. I'm going to remind Viktor Sokolov why threatening my family is a fatal mistake. The words should have terrified Elena.
Instead, she felt oddly protected. This was what Lorenzo's violence looked like when aimed at people who deserved it, when used to defend rather than attack. The meeting, she said, next week. Will it be dangerous? Every meeting with Sokolov is dangerous, but I've handled worse. Lorenzo's expression softened slightly. You're not to worry about this. That's my job. I'm carrying your child, at least that's what everyone believes. That makes your safety my concern too. The words came out fiercer than Elena intended. Don't tell me not to worry when you're walking into a meeting with someone who traffics in human lives. Lorenzo crossed to where she sat, crouching to meet her eyes at level. I've been doing this for 15 years, Elena. I know how to handle men like Sokolov, but I appreciate your concern. It's been a long time since anyone worried about whether I'd come home. His hand covered hers where it rested on her now visible baby bump, 17 weeks pregnant, finally showing enough that maternity clothes were becoming necessary. Lorenzo's palm was warm, steady, and Elena felt the baby flutter in response to the touch. Did you feel that? She whispered. Lorenzo's eyes widened. Was that the baby? Kicking. Elena guided his hand to where the movement had been strongest. It's early still, but sometimes if you wait quietly, there. The flutter came again, stronger this time. Lorenzo's expression transformed into something Elena had never seen from him, pure wonder, unguarded emotion. That's incredible, he breathed. That's a person, a whole person growing inside you. Your daughter, Elena said without thinking. Or son, we don't know yet, but yours, regardless of biology. Lorenzo met her eyes, and something shifted in the air between them. Not quite love, too early, too complicated, but something deeper than simple protection, recognition, partnership, the beginning of family built on choice rather than blood. I won't let anything happen to either of you, Lorenzo said fiercely. Sokolov, his people, anyone who threatens what we're building here, they'll learn what it costs to challenge me. The meeting happened 6 days later in a warehouse district that had seen better decades. Lorenzo insisted Elena stay at the estate under Marcus's protection, but he'd agreed to wear a wire so she could listen. Insurance, he called it. If something went wrong, at least someone would know what happened. Elena sat in Lorenzo's office surrounded by monitors and communication equipment, listening through headphones as Lorenzo arrived at the neutral location. His security team had swept the building twice, confirmed Sokolov's people had done the same. The setup was as safe as such meetings could be, which meant barely safe at all. Victor, Lorenzo's voice came through clear despite the audio compression. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Lorenzo De Luca. Sokolov's voice was rougher than Elena expected, scarred by cigarettes and violence. You've caused me considerable inconvenience with your protection of Victor Hale's woman, ex-wife. And she wasn't causing you inconvenience. Your people's decision to pursue her was the problem. Semantics. The sound of footsteps, two men circling each other. She was leverage. You removed that leverage by claiming her. Cost me an opportunity to motivate Hale toward faster repayment. Hale is working off his debt on schedule. You'll have your money's worth in labor within 10 years. Elena Ward has nothing to do with that arrangement. She's carrying his child. That makes her connected to my business, whether you like it or not. Sokolov's voice hardened. And my associate tells me she's quite comfortable in your home, running your new cafe, playing house while her ex-husband suffers for his crimes. Lorenzo's laugh was cold. You're jealous. That's what this is. You wanted her afraid and powerless, and instead she's thriving. It bothers you that your attempt to terrorize a pregnant woman failed. The silence that followed made Elena's heart race. She could hear her own pulse pounding in her ears, could imagine Lorenzo and Sokolov locked in some silent battle of wills. Careful, De Luca. Sokolov's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. Your protection of this woman is admirable. Foolish, but admirable. Don't let it make you reckless. And don't let your wounded pride make you suicidal. Lorenzo's tone matched Sokolov's for threat. Dmitri called Elena directly last week, threatened her, violated the boundaries of our arrangement. That was the first and last time. If your people contact her again, speak to her, look at her wrong. I'll consider it an act of war, and we both know you can't win a war with me. More silence. Then Sokolov laughed, bitter, acknowledging. You've changed, Lorenzo. Used to be you wouldn't risk everything for a woman. Now here you are, threatening war over Victor Hale's cast-off wife. She's not his anything, she's mine, and I protect what's mine. Clearly, the sound of movement, papers shuffling. Fine. Your woman is off limits. My people won't contact her, threaten her, or use her as leverage. Satisfied? I want it in writing. Formal declaration that Elena Ward and her child are under DeLuca family protection, recognized by all parties involved in our mutual business arrangements. You want me to legitimize your claim in front of everyone? Sokolov sounded almost amused. That's bold. Makes her a permanent part of your organization. No walking away from that. I'm aware. Do we have an agreement? More silence. Elena held her breath, waiting for violence or acceptance. We have an agreement, Sokolov said finally. I'll draft the documentation. But Lorenzo, understand what you're doing. You're making this woman and her baby targets for anyone who wants to hurt you. And in our world, that's a lot of people. I'm making them untouchable. There's a difference. Is there? Or are you just painting a bigger target while pretending it's armor? Lorenzo's response was quiet but firm. Time will tell. Are we done here? For now, but Lorenzo, about Hale. He dies when his debt is paid. Not before, but absolutely after. That's non-negotiable. Elena's stomach dropped. She'd known this was coming, but hearing it stated so bluntly made it real. Victor would die. In 10 years, after he'd worked off every dollar, he'd be executed for his crimes. That's between you and him, Lorenzo said evenly. Elena knows not to expect him in her child's life. Dead or enslaved makes little difference to her. Cold. I like it. Sokolov's approval was evident. You've learned well how to separate sentiment from business. I learned from watching people like you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a pregnant woman waiting for confirmation she's safe. The meeting ended with exchanged formalities and veiled threats. Lorenzo's drive back took 30 minutes that felt like hours. Elena paced his office, unable to sit still, processing everything she'd heard. When Lorenzo finally appeared, she launched herself at him without thinking. He caught her easily, arms wrapping around her with surprised but immediate comfort. I'm fine, he murmured into her hair. Everything went according to plan. You're safe, the baby's safe. Sokolov agreed to everything. He's going to kill Victor. Elena's voice was muffled against Lorenzo's chest. In 10 years. After the debt's paid. I know, I'm sorry you had to hear that. I don't care about Victor. Elena pulled back to look at Lorenzo's face. I care that I don't care. That I can hear someone planning his murder and feel nothing but relief that it's not happening immediately. What does that make me? Lorenzo's hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. It makes you a survivor, someone who understands that certain debts require payment in blood. You're not celebrating his death, you're just not mourning it. That's not the same as being cruel. It feels cruel. It feels honest. Lorenzo's expression was gentle in ways she'd rarely seen. Victor made his choices. He'll face consequences for those choices. You're allowed to focus on protecting yourself and your child instead of saving him from himself. Elena leaned into Lorenzo's touch, exhausted by emotion and pregnancy hormones and the weight of impossible moral calculations. In this moment, he wasn't a crime boss or dangerous criminal. He was just someone who understood, who didn't judge her for being relieved that her ex-husband's fate was sealed. Take me home, she whispered. I need to lie down. Lorenzo guided her through the estate's halls to her room, his hand steady on her back. At her door, he paused. For what it's worth, I think you're handling all of this remarkably well, better than most people would. I don't feel like I'm handling it well. I feel like I'm barely holding together. Welcome to survival. Lorenzo's smile was slight, sad. It always feels like barely holding together. You just learn to function while falling apart. After he left, Elena collapsed onto her bed fully clothed. The baby kicked, stronger now, more insistent. She pressed both hands to her stomach, feeling the life that had somehow survived everything the past few weeks had thrown at them. Your father will never hurt you, she promised the flutter beneath her palms. Lorenzo will make sure of that, and so will I. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to become. The baby kicked again, as if acknowledging the vow. Outside her window, the sun was setting over manicured gardens. Beautiful, peaceful, bought with blood money and maintained through violence. But safe. And for now, safety was worth any price. The cafe opened on a Tuesday morning in late February, 6 months after Elena had signed divorce papers in a courthouse that felt like another lifetime. She stood behind the counter at 5:30, watching her staff prepare for opening, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: pride. The space had transformed beyond her wildest expectations. Exposed brick walls displayed local artwork. Edison bulbs cast warm light over reclaimed wood tables. The espresso machine gleamed like sculpture, and the pastry case held creations that belonged in magazines. Everything was perfect, legitimate, hers. Well, mostly hers. The back office held filing cabinets with double locks and a safe built into the floor. Certain deliveries arrived after hours. Lorenzo met associates here weekly in the private room upstairs. But the cafe itself, the coffee, the food, the customer experience, that was entirely Elena's vision realized. Nervous? Sarah Chen appeared at her elbow, already dressed in the black apron that served as their uniform. At 26, she was the head barista Elena had hired after 3 rounds of interviews. Smart, discreet, capable of pulling perfect shots while ignoring whatever she saw in that back office. Terrified, Elena admitted. She was 7 months pregnant now, her belly prominent beneath the specially designed apron that accommodated her changing shape. What if no one comes? What if the coffee's terrible and the pastries are stale and we fail spectacularly? Then we adjust and try again. Sarah's pragmatism was one of the qualities Elena valued most. But that won't happen. The coffee is excellent, the pastries are perfect, and you've created something special here. People will come. Sarah was right. The first customer arrived at 6:15, a businessman in an expensive suit who ordered an espresso and a croissant, then returned 30 minutes later with 3 colleagues. By 8, there was a line out the door. By noon, they'd sold out of 2 pastry varieties and had to brew emergency backup coffee. Elena moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency, managing the register while keeping an eye on every detail. She caught Sarah's slight nod when a particular customer entered, one of Lorenzo's associates making a scheduled pickup from the back office. Watched her newest hire, a culinary school graduate named Marcus, handle a demanding customer with grace. Noticed when the lunch rush peaked and adjusted staffing accordingly. This was what she'd been made for. Not serving people who barely saw her, building something from nothing. Creating spaces where people felt welcome while maintaining the careful balance between legitimate business and necessary secrecy. Lorenzo appeared at 2, when the afternoon lull had finally arrived. He looked out of place among the laptops and coffee cups. Too dangerous, too expensive, too obviously someone who didn't belong in casual spaces. But his eyes found Elena behind the counter, and his expression softened into something almost gentle. "How's the first day?" he asked, accepting the espresso she'd already started pulling. "Successful beyond expectations. We'll need to increase our pastry order and hire another barista for weekday mornings." Elena came around the counter to sit with him, her back aching from hours on her feet. The back office had 3 pickups without incident. Sarah handled the last one perfectly. Didn't even blink. "Good. I knew you'd choose well." Lorenzo's gaze dropped to her belly, where the baby was currently doing acrobatics against her ribs. "How are you feeling? Be honest." "Exhausted, sore, exhilarated," Elena laughed, pressing a hand to where the baby kicked most insistently. "Dr. Chen said I should reduce my hours, but I can't. Not yet. Not when everything's finally coming together." "You could hire a manager. Step back slightly." "I could, but I won't." Elena met his eyes steadily. "This is mine, Lorenzo. The first thing in my life that's truly mine. I'm not giving it up just because I'm pregnant." Something like pride crossed Lorenzo's face. "Stubborn. I'm learning that's your defining characteristic. You're one to talk. Elena gestured to his suit, his bearing, the way even her customers seemed to instinctively give him space. You've built an empire through stubbornness. True. Lorenzo sipped his espresso, savoring it with the appreciation of someone who knew quality. This is excellent, by the way, best I've had outside Italy. Sarah's work. She trained in Portland under some award-winning barista. Elena watched her staff work, each person moving with purposeful efficiency. I'm proud of what we've created here. Even knowing what happens in that back office, I'm proud of the front of house. Does that make me complicit or just practical? Lorenzo considered the question seriously. It makes you someone who understands that morality isn't binary, that good people sometimes operate in gray spaces because the alternative is worse. You're not complicit in my business, Elena. You're running a legitimate cafe that happens to share space with other operations. There's a difference. Is there? Or am I just telling myself that to sleep at night? Both can be true. Lorenzo's hand found hers across the table, a gesture that had become increasingly natural over the past months. You're allowed to be proud of this cafe while acknowledging its complicated funding. The world isn't simple. People aren't simple. We do our best with the options available. The baby kicked hard enough that Lorenzo felt it through their joined hands. His expression transformed into that wonder Elena had seen the first time he'd felt movement, pure, unguarded emotion. Active today, he observed. Very. Dr. Chen says that's normal for this stage. Elena shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. We find out the gender next week. Are you coming to the appointment? Lorenzo's surprise was visible. You want me there? Of course I want you there. You're this baby's father in every way that matters. The words came out fiercer than Elena intended. Biology is irrelevant. You're the one showing up, providing, caring about whether we're healthy and safe. That makes you family. Lorenzo's throat worked, emotion clearly struggling against the control he'd maintained for decades. I'd be honored to come to the appointment. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the cafe operate around them. Elena found herself studying Lorenzo's profile, the sharp angles that no longer seemed quite so dangerous, the way his hand held hers with careful gentleness, the softness that appeared when he thought she wasn't watching. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being purely protection, had transformed into something deeper, more complicated. Not quite love, too early, too fraught with power imbalances, but the foundation of it, the possibility of something real growing from desperate circumstances. I should get back to work, Elena said reluctantly. Evening crowd will start soon. I'll send Marcus to take you home at 6. You need rest. Lorenzo, not negotiable. You've been on your feet since 5:30. The baby needs you healthy, which means you need adequate rest. His tone brooked no argument. You can fight me on many things, Elena. This isn't one of them. Elena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her. Fine. 6 o'clock. But I'm coming back tomorrow at 5. Wouldn't expect anything else. The next week brought a rhythm that felt sustainable. Elena worked mornings and early afternoons, then returned to the estate for rest and dinner with Lorenzo when his schedule permitted. The cafe thrived, building a loyal customer base while discreetly serving Lorenzo's business needs. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the distance between Elena and Lorenzo began to close. The ultrasound appointment happened on a Wednesday. Doctor Chen had set up her portable equipment in Elena's room at the estate, maintaining the privacy that had become essential. Lorenzo sat beside the bed, his hand finding Elena's automatically. Ready to find out? Dr. Chen asked, warming the gel. Yes, Elena and Lorenzo said simultaneously, then looked at each other and laughed. Dr. Chen moved the wand across Elena's stomach, studying the screen with practiced attention. There we go, clear view. Would you like to know? Please, Elena breathed. Congratulations, you're having a daughter. Dr. Chen turned the screen so they could see. See there? That's her profile. And there, you can see her hand near her face. Elena stared at the grainy image, tears streaming down her face unchecked. A daughter. She was having a daughter. A little girl who would never doubt her worth, never accept neglect as love, never settle for men like Victor Hale. Lorenzo's hand tightened around hers, And when Elena looked at him, she saw tears tracking down his face too. He made no move to hide them, didn't seem embarrassed by the emotion. "A daughter," he whispered. "Isabella, if you approve of the name." Elena's breath caught. "Isabella? It was my mother's name, but only if you want—" "Isabella De Luca." Elena tested the name, felt it settle into her heart like it had always belonged there. "It's perfect. She's perfect." "Doctor." Chen gave them privacy after confirming everything looked healthy. Elena lay on the bed, gels still coating her stomach, overwhelmed by the reality of this tiny person who would arrive in less than 3 months. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "What if I'm a terrible mother? What if I don't know how to protect her from the world?" Lorenzo stretched out beside her, carefully, respectfully, maintaining space but offering comfort. "You'll be an excellent mother. You're already protecting her by making choices that prioritize her safety over your comfort." "And you?" Elena turned to face him. "What kind of father will you be to a child who isn't biologically yours?" "The kind my mother needed and never had." Lorenzo's voice was rough with emotion. "The kind who shows up, who protects, who loves unconditionally regardless of blood. Isabella will never doubt she's wanted, never question whether she's worth fighting for, I promise you that." Elena believed him completely, believed in the fierce devotion she saw in his eyes, believed that this dangerous man who'd built an empire on violence would be gentle with her daughter in ways Victor never could have been. "I'm falling in love with you," she heard herself say. "I probably shouldn't be. The power dynamics are all wrong, the circumstances are complicated, and I'm 7 months pregnant with another man's child. But I'm falling in love with you anyway." Lorenzo went very still. "Elena, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Needed to be honest about what's happening between us." Elena's hand found his face, tracing the sharp lines she'd come to know so well. "I understand if you don't feel the same. This started as protection, not romance. But I thought you should know where I stand." Lorenzo caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that felt more intimate than anything they'd shared. "I've been falling in love with you since the courthouse. Since I saw you holding those divorce papers like they were a prison sentence, trying so hard to be brave when you were clearly terrified. I just didn't think I had the right to say it." "Why not?" "Because I'm the reason you're here. Because the power imbalance you mentioned is real. You depend on me for safety, resources, everything. How could I know if your feelings are genuine or just gratitude dressed up as affection?" Elena pushed herself up on one elbow, meeting his eyes with fierce certainty. "I know the difference between gratitude and love, Lorenzo. I'm grateful to Marcus for saving me at the cafe. I'm grateful to Dr. Chen for excellent prenatal care. I'm grateful to Maria for teaching me how to navigate your world. But I love you. I love your stupid protective instincts and the way you pretend to be heartless while secretly being the most caring person I've met. I love how you talk to my belly when you think I'm asleep. I love that you're building something legitimate for Isabella's future while still maintaining the empire that keeps us safe. That's love, not gratitude." Lorenzo's control finally cracked. He pulled Elena into his arms, carefully, mindful of her pregnant belly, and kissed her with barely restrained passion. Elena melted into him, tasting salt from tears she wasn't sure were his or hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lorenzo pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you," he said roughly. "I love you and Isabella and the future we're building. And I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I won't regret it." Elena's certainty was absolute. "This isn't the life I planned, but it's the one I choose. You're the one I choose." They lay together as afternoon faded to evening, hands intertwined, talking about nursery colors and middle names and the million small details of preparing for a child. Not once did Victor's name come up. He'd become irrelevant, a footnote in Elena's history, nothing more. The weeks that followed were the happiest Elena had ever known. The cafe continued thriving, expanding hours to meet demand. She hired 2 more baristas and a part-time manager to handle days when pregnancy made standing for hours impossible. Lorenzo's business flourished, territories expanding, profits increasing through the careful balance of legitimate and criminal enterprise. And between them, something beautiful was growing. Lorenzo courted her properly, despite them already living together. brought flowers, planned dates that accommodated her limited mobility, treated her with a reverence that made Elena feel precious. They were building a foundation that would outlast the crisis that brought them together. Elena was 8 months pregnant when Lorenzo's lawyer arrived with paperwork. She found them in Lorenzo's office, documents spread across the desk, both men wearing serious expressions. "What's wrong?" Elena's hand went protectively to her belly. "Nothing's wrong." Lorenzo gestured her forward. "We're just handling some legal matters, making things official." The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine, who specialized in creative legal solutions, smiled warmly. "Congratulations are in order, Ms. Ward. Lorenzo is adopting Isabella." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "Adoption paperwork. Establishing legal paternity so Isabella becomes my daughter-in-law as well as love." Lorenzo's expression was vulnerable in ways she rarely saw. "If you approve, it's your decision ultimately." Tears blurred Elena's vision. "You want to legally adopt her, even though she's not born yet?" "Especially because she's not born yet. I want my name on her birth certificate. Want to be listed as her father from the very beginning." Lorenzo stood, crossing to take Elena's hands. "I want every legal protection available. Want the world to know she's mine." "Yes." Elena didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely yes. I want that too." Catherine walked them through the paperwork, surprisingly straightforward, given Victor had signed away all parental rights as part of his debt repayment agreement. By the time Elena signed the final document, Isabella De Luca legally belonged to Lorenzo as much as to her. "There's one more thing." Lorenzo pulled a small velvet box from his desk drawer. "I know the timing is complicated. You're pregnant. We've only known each other 8 months. Everything about this is unconventional, but I want you to understand my intentions." He opened the box to reveal a ring, elegant, simple, a single diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the office walls. "Elena Ward, I love you. I love our daughter. I want to build a life with you that's based on choice, not circumstance. On love, not protection." Lorenzo's voice was steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Will you marry me? Not now, after Isabella's born, when you've had time to recover and really consider what you're agreeing to. But will you at least wear this ring as a promise that we're building towards something permanent?" Elena couldn't speak past the tears. She nodded frantically, holding out her shaking hand. Lorenzo slid the ring onto her finger, perfect fit, because of course he'd guessed correctly, and pulled her into his arms. "Is that a yes?" he murmured against her hair. "That's a yes. That's yes to everything. Marriage, family, the future, all of it." Elena pulled back to look at his face. "I choose you, Lorenzo De Luca. I choose this life, this family, this complicated, beautiful thing we're creating, forever." Isabella was born on a Sunday morning in late May, arriving 3 weeks early with the same stubborn determination her mother possessed. Elena's labor was swift and intense, Lorenzo holding her hand through every contraction, whispering encouragement and love. When the doctor finally placed Isabella in Elena's arms, the world narrowed to just the 3 of them. Isabella had dark hair like Lorenzo, Elena's nose, and lungs that announced her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable womb. "She's perfect," Lorenzo breathed, one finger tracing Isabella's tiny face. "Absolutely perfect." "She looks like you," Elena said wonderingly. "I know genetics don't work that way, but she does. Look at her eyes." "My mother's eyes," Lorenzo's voice cracked, dark and fierce. She would have loved this little fighter. Dr. Chen handled the birth certificate personally, ensuring Lorenzo's name appeared in the father field without question. Isabella Maria De Luca, named for Lorenzo's mother and Elena's, entered the world already surrounded by fierce protection and unconditional love. The first weeks were exhausting and wonderful simultaneously. Elena learned to breastfeed with Lorenzo's patient support, figured out Isabella's different cries, slowly adjusted to surviving on fragmented sleep. Lorenzo proved to be an exceptional father, changing diapers at 3 a.m. without complaint, wearing Isabella in a carrier while handling business calls, reading to her in Italian even though she obviously couldn't understand. "You're a natural at this," Elena observed one night, watching Lorenzo rock their fussy daughter while reviewing contracts. "How?" "Practice. I helped raise several younger cousins after my mother died. Group homes teach you infant care quickly. Lorenzo adjusted Isabella's position, and she immediately settled against his chest. Besides, she makes it easy. Best-tempered baby I've ever met. She likes you better than me sometimes. Elena meant it teasingly, but exhaustion made her voice crack. Lorenzo looked up sharply. That's not true. You're her mother, the person she needs most. I'm just the one who's not recovering from birth and can therefore handle the 3 a.m. screaming sessions. Still, you're so good with her. Elena wiped at tears she couldn't quite explain. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't give her everything she needs? Elena. Lorenzo set down his papers, carefully maneuvering Isabella to one arm so he could pull Elena close with the other. You're giving her everything she needs. Love, attention, the security of knowing she's wanted, the fact that you're worried about being enough proves you're an excellent mother. Hormones, Elena muttered against his shoulder. Dr. Chen warned me about postpartum emotions. Hormones or legitimate concerns, either way, I'm here. Lorenzo kissed the top of her head. You're not doing this alone. You'll never do anything alone again if I have any say. 3 months after Isabella's birth, Victor Hale died in an industrial accident at one of Sokolov's warehouses. The official report called it negligence, improper safety protocols, tragic but predictable. Lorenzo told Elena the truth over morning coffee while Isabella slept in her bassinet. It was quick. He didn't suffer. Sokolov wanted me to know it was handled humanely, as these things go. Elena stared at her coffee, feeling nothing but distant closure. Should I feel sadder? He was my husband for 5 years, the biological father of my daughter. You're allowed to feel however you feel. Grief, relief, nothing at all. There's no correct response to learning your ex-husband is dead. I feel relieved, Elena admitted quietly, that Isabella will never have to know him, never have to reconcile the father she loves with the biological parent who would have disappointed her. Is that terrible? It's honest. Lorenzo's hand covered hers. Victor made choices that led to consequences. You're not responsible for mourning him when he gave you nothing worth mourning. They held a small private memorial, more for form than genuine grief. Katerina Volkov attended surprisingly, offering condolences that felt almost genuine. I'm sorry for your loss, she said to Elena afterward, even if the loss is more complicated than simple. Thank you for coming, I mean. Elena adjusted Isabella against her shoulder. I know you didn't have to. Lorenzo is family to me. That makes you family too. Katerina's gaze softened on Isabella. Beautiful daughter. She has your strength in her face already. And Lorenzo's stubbornness. The best combination, Katerina smiled. Raise her well, Elena. The world needs fierce women who know their worth. The memorial marked the final chapter of Elena's old life closing. Victor was gone. His debts paid in blood and labor. The threats had evaporated. Safety was no longer temporary protection, but permanent reality. Lorenzo proposed officially on a Friday evening in October, 6 months after Isabella's birth. He'd planned an elaborate evening, private dinner, musicians, the romance Elena deserved. But Isabella had other ideas, screaming through the expensive meal until they gave up and returned to the estate. I'm sorry, Lorenzo said, bouncing a fussy Isabella. I wanted this to be perfect. It is perfect. Elena took their daughter, settling into the familiar rhythm of nursing that would soothe her fastest. This is our life. Late nights, interrupted plans, baby screams instead of violins. I wouldn't change it. Lorenzo knelt beside the rocking chair, pulling the ring box from his pocket. Elena Ward, I love you more than I knew I could love anyone. You've given me a family I didn't think I deserved, taught me that protection and love aren't mutually exclusive, shown me that damaged people can build beautiful things together. Will you marry me? Make this permanent in every way that matters. I already said yes 8 months ago. Elena smiled through happy tears. But yes, absolutely yes. I'll marry you tomorrow if you want. Next month. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Lorenzo slid the engagement ring, which Elena had been wearing since the day he gave it, from her finger and replaced it with a wedding band that matched perfectly. Mrs. DeLuca has a nice sound. It really does. They married on a November afternoon with leaves falling like gold outside the estate's small chapel. Elena wore ivory silk that accommodated her post-pregnancy body, held Isabella in her arms during the ceremony because their daughter refused to be separated from her mother. Lorenzo spoke his vows in Italian and English, promising protection and love and partnership in both languages. Marcus stood as best man, making a surprisingly emotional toast about watching Lorenzo transform from isolated crime boss to devoted father and husband. Caterina served as Elena's matron of honor, whispering that Lorenzo's mother would be proud of the man he'd become. The reception was small, intimate, exactly what both Elena and Lorenzo wanted. No elaborate displays, no criminal associates using the wedding as networking opportunity. Just family, chosen and found, celebrating something beautiful that had grown from desperate circumstances. Happy? Lorenzo asked, slow dancing with Elena while various guests passed Isabella around like a beloved doll. Happier than I ever imagined being. Elena rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. A year ago, I was signing divorce papers. Now I'm married to a man who actually loves me, with a daughter who'll never doubt she's wanted. It's almost too much. You deserve every bit of it. Deserve more than I can give you, honestly. Lorenzo's arms tightened around her. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying. You already give me everything that matters. Safety, love, partnership, a future where our daughter can choose her own path. Elena looked up at him. That's more than enough. The cafe continued thriving, expanding to a second location by Isabella's first birthday. Elena managed both, gradually transitioning to advisory roles as she realized running two businesses while raising a toddler required help. She hired excellent managers, trained them thoroughly, and learned to delegate in ways her control freak tendencies initially resisted. Lorenzo's business evolved too. He began shifting resources toward legitimate enterprises, real estate development, import-export that didn't involve weapons, investments in technology startups. The criminal elements didn't disappear, but they became less central as legal profits increased. I want Isabella to inherit something clean, he explained one night while reviewing quarterly reports. Something she can be proud of instead of conflicted about. You're building that. Elena reviewed the cafe's financials at the same desk, their domestic partnership extending to shared office space. Slowly, but genuinely, she'll see what you accomplished and understand it was for her. Isabella grew into a fierce, brilliant child who inherited her mother's stubborn determination and her father's strategic thinking. She learned to speak before she walked, demanding answers to questions most toddlers never considered. By age 2, she was accompanying Elena to the cafe, watching operations with Lorenzo's assessing gaze. She's going to be formidable, Dr. Chen observed during a routine checkup. Intelligence, stubbornness, parents who actually encourage her ambitions instead of limiting them. Watch out, world. Elena couldn't disagree. Isabella was everything she'd hoped her daughter would be. Confident, curious, certain of her worth and her place in the world. She would never doubt whether she deserved love, never accept less than she was worth, never let anyone diminish her dreams. 5 years after that morning in the courthouse, Elena stood in the original cafe watching her staff prepare for the lunch rush. Isabella sat at the corner table doing homework, kindergarten worksheets she completed with focused intensity. Lorenzo was due any minute for their standing weekly lunch, the ritual that kept them connected despite busy schedules. Sarah appeared beside Elena, following her gaze. Hard to believe it's been 5 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Other times like a different lifetime. Elena smiled at her head barista, who'd become a genuine friend over the years. Thank you for being here from the beginning, for trusting me when this was just an ambitious plan. Thank you for giving me a chance when most people saw my background and assumed things. Sarah's expression turned thoughtful. We've both come far. You especially. Elena considered the journey, from invisible waitress to successful business owner, from abused wife to genuinely loved partner, from scared and pregnant to confident mother raising an extraordinary daughter. The transformation still sometimes shocked her. Lorenzo arrived precisely on time, as always. Isabella launched herself at him with squeals of papa that never failed to melt his dangerous exterior. He scooped her up, pressing kisses to her dark curls while she chattered about her day. Mama says if I finish my homework, we can get gelato. Isabella informed him seriously. But the math is hard. Then we'll work on it together after lunch. Lorenzo carried her to their usual table, waving at Elena. Your mother and I need to discuss business first. Boring adult business? Isabella's tone suggested this was a grave personal offense. Very boring. Why don't you color while we talk? After Isabella was settled with crayons and paper, Lorenzo turned his attention to Elena. I have news. Sokolov died last night. Heart attack. His organization is dissolving, territories being divided among those of us who survived his reign. Elena processed this carefully. That's good? One less threat? It's excellent. The last major player who remembered Victor Hale, who knew the original circumstances of your protection. Lorenzo's expression was satisfied. The new generation knows only that you're my wife, Isabella's my daughter, and our family is untouchable. The past is finally, truly buried. Relief flooded through Elena. No more looking over my shoulder, no more worrying about someone using old leverage. No more. You're safe. Isabella is safe. Everything we've built is secure. Lorenzo reached across the table, linking their fingers. We won. We survived, Elena corrected gently. And we built something beautiful from the survival. That's better than winning. They ate lunch together, Isabella chattering between bites about playground politics and the injustice of nap time. Elena watched her daughter, fierce and brilliant and so perfectly loved, and felt profound gratitude for the twisted path that had led here. That night, after Isabella was asleep and the house was quiet, Elena found Lorenzo in his study reviewing the documents that formalized his acquisition of Sokolov's former territories. Expanding the empire? She asked, settling into the chair across from him. Dismantling it, actually. Lorenzo set down his pen, removing reading glasses that made him look distinguished. I'm selling off the criminal enterprises, keeping only the legitimate businesses, using the profits to establish a foundation. A foundation? For women escaping dangerous situations, domestic violence, trafficking, exploitation, the things my mother faced, the things that made you vulnerable. Lorenzo's expression was intense. I want to build something that protects people the way I protect you, that gives them resources, safety, new identities if needed, real choices instead of impossible situations. Elena's throat tightened with emotion. That's beautiful. And appropriate. What are you calling it? The Maria Elena Foundation, after my mother and my wife. Lorenzo stood, crossing to pull Elena into his arms. You've taught me that the greatest power isn't dominating others. It's protecting those who can't protect themselves. I want to use everything I've built for that. I love you. Elena pressed her face into his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him. I love who you are, who you're becoming, the future we're creating, all of it. I love you too, more than I thought I was capable of loving. Lorenzo's arms tightened around her. You saved me, Elena. Not from danger, but from becoming the monster I was afraid I'd be. You gave me purpose beyond power, family beyond fear. They stood together in the quiet office, two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. Outside, the estate stretched secure and beautiful, no longer a cage but a home. Upstairs, their daughter slept peacefully, dreaming whatever 5-year-olds dreamed, safe and loved, and certain of her place in the world. Elena thought back to that morning in the courthouse, terrified, pregnant, signing away a marriage that had never been real. If someone had told her then where she'd be 5 years later, she never would have believed it. Would have thought the idea of loving a crime boss, raising his adopted daughter, building an empire of safety from foundations of violence was absurd. But life was absurd. Love was absurd. The idea that the worst day of your life could become the doorway to the best years was gloriously, impossibly absurd. And Elena Ward DeLuca, former waitress, survivor, mother, wife, business owner, and architect of her own happiness, had learned to embrace the absurdity. She'd learned that safety didn't always look gentle, that protection sometimes wore dangerous faces, that love could grow in the strangest soil and flourish anyway. She'd learned that the family you choose matters more than the family you're born into, that motherhood transforms you in ways you never anticipate, that strength comes in forms you never expected. Most importantly, she'd learned that it was never too late to choose yourself, to demand better, to walk away from situations that diminished you and toward futures that celebrated you. Standing in Lorenzo's arms, listening to her daughter's soft breathing through the baby monitor, Elena felt complete in ways she'd never imagined possible. This was her life now. Messy and complicated and built on foundations that wouldn't survive moral scrutiny, but also beautiful and chosen and filled with love that had transformed two damaged people into something whole. The courthouse where she'd signed divorce papers still existed somewhere in the city. The cafe where she'd nearly been kidnapped probably had new owners by now. Victor was dead and buried, his mistakes finally paid for in the currency he'd chosen. But Elena wasn't that terrified woman anymore. Wasn't someone who apologized for existing or accepted crumbs as affection. She was Elena DeLuca, wife, mother, survivor, builder of empires both commercial and emotional, and she'd turned her gilded cage into a kingdom, her captor into her partner, and her desperation into something that looked remarkably like freedom. That was enough. That was everything. That was home.